Hi, welcome everyone. The time is 6:30 and I would like to call this District 204 Committee of the Whole meeting with action to order. Marilyn, will you please call the roll?
Member Alvarez.
Present.
Member Vita Daniels. Present. Member Kazoka Campbell.
Present.
Member Dillon.
Here.
Member Giannotti Fry.
Here.
Member Kennedy.
Present.
Member Lopez.
Here. All right, I'd ask all to rise and say the pledge of allegiance. Pledge of allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our next item is public participation. Marilyn, do we have anyone signed up for tonight's first public comment session? All right. As a reminder, there are two options for public participation. The first opportunity is for individuals who signed up prior to the meeting. For those who wish to speak during our second opportunity at the end of the meeting, please see Marilyn Muscolino just outside the room. The board appreciates hearing from our community but does not engage in dialogue or discussion. If there's a comment that requires follow-up, the appropriate administrator will respond at a later time. In accordance with board policies 2:230 and 8:30, we appreciate you limiting your comments to 3 minutes and for keeping tonight's meeting respectful and civil. Marilyn, will you please call our first speaker?
Christie.
Sure, you've all seen my name this summer. I've sent a few emails to the board, so thank you for letting me speak tonight. I'm here as a parent, a taxpayer, a resident, former school board member for District 106, which feeds into LT, and someone who supported this district for a really long time. I'm also here because I'm deeply concerned about recent changes to the sideline cheerleading program, changes that were made without transparency, and that stand in direct conflict with LT's stated values. For years, sideline cheer has been non-competitive, spirit-based activity, one grounded in inclusivity, school pride, and student connection. It welcomes students from all backgrounds and skill levels. The program valued dedication, leadership, consistency, not just a technical performance. It gave students a sense of belonging and purpose, often becoming their home within the school. Let me be clear, this year was very different than the past. Christy Gabriel, club sponsor, made sweeping, unneeded changes. The model of inclusivity and community was abruptly discarded this year. Without any notice to students or families, the new sponsor in her first year adopted a competitive style tryout process. Students were expected to learn a complex routine in a single day and be evaluated on less than 24 hours later. There was no consideration of past involvement, no recognition of leadership or volunteerism, and no indication that the expectations or evaluation criteria had changed in any way. This was a long-standing measure of students that sought to participate in the program, the volunteerism and all of those good pieces. And students who had committed to many years in the club actually learned via generic email while they were actively volunteering at the affiliated Lion Cup cheer camp that they had been cut. So all of these students, 3 seniors, all got cut and got an email during the camp that they were leading on behalf of Spirit Cheerleading. I can see, as a parent, you could probably see why that was pretty upsetting. Pretty upsetting to the 3 seniors too. I thought it was heartless. I thought it was interesting that the sponsor had no idea that the program was running and that these students were volunteering. Clearly a huge disconnect. It was unprofessional, it was unacceptable. Yet these 3 students who were cut came back to fulfill their commitment for the rest of the week, which I think says something about how much they value the program, how much they love Shannon Eddy, who's been working with the program for a number of years. I think it says a lot. But no one asked for this change, no one explained it, and despite multiple requests, the district has not clarified who had the authority to make such a major shift to a long-standing program. The program's heritage actually began as a program initiated by special education staff members who saw a need for students of all abilities to participate in a meaningful way. My own child forged special relationships with students of all abilities throughout her time in the program. She enjoyed that aspect immensely. This lack of transparency and inability to provide rationale for the change is unacceptable, and it has real consequences for students who have given years of their time and effort, only to be cut without warning, especially those seniors who rely on a robust track record of school involvement to bolster college applications. As an institution dedicated to helping students succeed after high school, I'm saddened in the leadership displayed. I'm almost done. Let me be clear, this is not about competitive cheer. We actually have a fabulous competitive cheer team. They're athletes, they rock. If you've not seen them, they're amazing. This program already exists at LT. We don't need another competitive cheerleading program. We've taken something that has this meaningful heritage and really means something to a lot of kids and tried to turn it into a pseudo-competitive cheer program. That we don't need another one. We have those fabulous athletes. It's a different thing. This is about
Sorry,
community
I
and-
just asked you to wrap it up, our time.
Yep.
So.
Your mission and equity statement speaks about inclusion, belonging, and empowering all students. Those ideals don't align with how the situation has been handled. Students are blindsided, their contributions disregarded, and no meaningful explanation or remedy has been offered. Lots of people have acknowledged that this was improperly handled, but no one has been willing to do what is right for our kids. You have the power to fix this. Reinstating seniors who were cut would have been an appropriate step. Restoring the inclusive nature of sideline cheer would be a top priority for the district. Committing to transparent process before any program is fundamentally changed again. I still think that answers have not been put out in the public as to why this change happened, who asked for it, who authorized it, who was going along with it. None of those things have been answered.
I'm sorry, your time has expired.
Sure.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you. Okay. Before we begin, I would like to welcome Dr. Payne. Being new to our table here, I know we've met you in our hiring back in the spring, so welcome. We're very excited to have you. Our first item is the annual 2024-2025 student attendance and discipline data report, as well as the 2025-26 area of emphasis. Dr. Leslie Owens.
Thank you, President Albors. For those board members who are new, I'll explain just a little bit about the fact that this is our yearly, the cadence of which when we present this information. So each year in August, starting back in the 2022 school year, we present a report on our attendance data, our behavior data, and then our plan for improvement in the coming school year. So I'm going to walk us through a bit of the data, and then Dr. Tyrell will walk us through our plan for next year. This year, because we started our restorative intervention room, it was the first year this past school year, we also have some guests here to walk us through the very first annual report on our restorative intervention room and data. So there's a lot of information that you'll be getting tonight, and certainly we will answer any questions that the board has. Just to start things out, our building leadership team and our student support teams, they are dialed into the data on a daily basis. So they are looking at this data from an individual lens, day in, day out, working with students and families, working with each other, and coming up with the intervention solutions, problem solving every single day. Each quarter, we're able to take a step back and look at bigger data sets, and so myself and Dr. Rowe join the teams and look at that data and see where are trends popping up, are there any questions, are things looking the way we would expect, are things looking ways that we would not expect. And that gives us a really good opportunity to take a look at that as a multidisciplinary team. And then again in the summer, we're able to really take that step back, excuse me, and look at the entire year's worth of data and put it into this report. So there's multiple looks on this with multiple people each year, but again, this is when we get to present kind of the overarching themes and data to the board. With the RIR, I'm going to let our team talk about that in a minute, but I do just want to say the large goal of having a restorative intervention room was to reduce our use of exclusionary discipline. And you'll see in the data that we did meet that goal. So we went from having 58 out-of-school suspensions in 23-24 to having 9 during the last school year. And that is a huge celebration for us. We know that we're never going to get to a point where students absolutely don't make mistakes and don't need to have some type of consequence or accountability or support. But getting that from 58 down to 9 was a huge effort, on the parts of many who are here in the room and many who are not here in the room. And so we're really excited about that, and I'm excited for you to all hear more about the RIR and how we address that. Senate Bill 100, which was 16, 17, really guided schools to say, do not use exclusionary discipline unless you're concerned about safety. And we take that very seriously. We know that students do better when they're in our care, when they are here and able to process through things that have happened, when they're able to repair harm that may have happened based on a decision that was made. We understand safety as our top priority, and that goes for physical safety and psychological safety, and we do use those out of school moments, and we absolutely need to. But using just the guidance from the law, best practice, and what we believe is having a restorative community here, we're just really excited about the RIR, and I can't wait for you guys to hear that part of the presentation. But again, just wanted to start with that data point because that's a huge celebration for us. And what we're really going to look at, or what's presented in the chart, are the referrals. So the total reported events for the year that made it to referral. So that referral is initiated by a staff member. Our assistant principals take in those referrals and kind of sort through them, read through them, figure out what's going on, categorize those referrals. And so that's what you see. And we've presented on the same, really the same referrals each year. We keep it to kind of our top behavioral referrals and some of our what we would consider major referrals. So that's what you'll see in your chart. Obviously, we've got year 23-24 on the left side with 24-25 on the right side. Anywhere where our numbers have gone up a bit, indicating that there were more referrals or larger attendance issues, you'll see that in yellow. And then you'll see in green any area where we made some improvements or where numbers have gone down. So we did see an uptick this year in just overall reported events, and that includes behavior and attendance together. We do, just a quick side note on that, through the RIR we do process attendance and behavior situations, so that both things are handled through our RIR as well as in a myriad of other ways. But again, you'll see that there's a little bit of uptick in that attendance and behavior, and then overall in our referrals. We also showed the number of the behavioral referrals, not including the no-show detentions. We do initiate referrals when students don't show up to the detention that they're given as a result of a referral. And so that does kind of increase our numbers in a way, but that's really a secondary offense based on something that happened originally, something else that happened originally. What we're most proud of when we look at the chart, obviously those yellow areas are all areas that we dig into immediately to say, okay, what's going on? Why are numbers not moving in the direction that we want them to? But what we're proud about seeing is that more of our serious behavior referrals are green than yellow, and those are the things that we worry most about. Those are the things with some serious safety implications and things that we know that don't create a great climate and culture for a school building, and so we're really happy to see that that those numbers have improved. Underneath the chart, you'll see just kind of a brief summary of the numbers. It's really just a description of the numbers you see above, so I won't go through each and all of those. And then the second chart that you see is our disaggregated discipline referrals. So that really takes our racial indicators that are the same indicators that are used by the federal government, and so we look at our populations and again we just compare our year attendance and discipline, attendance on the left and discipline on the right. Underneath the chart, you'll see for quick reference the population groups in our total student population from our last report card. So just as a note of comparison. What you'll see is that we still have some disproportionality that we are demonstrating in terms of discipline and attendance. So our students, specifically our students who are Hispanic or Latino, Black or African American, are overrepresented in the data, and our white students are underrepresented in the data. Another point to note, it's not in the chart, but our male students typically are overrepresented within discipline attendance often, and our female students are underrepresented. So disproportionality does occur in our high school and across most high schools, and so again, that's not an excuse for why that occurs or that we're not looking at it, but it's something that we note, it's something that we look at every single year, and something that we work to address. And I know that when Dr. Tyrell provides kind of our plan for how we're addressing these numbers, that she'll talk a bit about that. Again, we look at these reports day to day, quarter to quarter, and year to year. The difference from year to year is not always statistically significant, but it's significant to us in terms of its real students represented by these numbers, and we want to make sure that we're always working to improve the experience that our students are having when mistakes are made and when they're not. So we want to make sure that we have appropriate supports in place for our students and then for our staff members. And so again, Dr. Tyrell will talk a lot about that, but how are we ensuring that our educators have the understanding, the knowledge, and the tools that they need in order to address these things. It's not just, when you're talking about attendance and discipline, if you're only talking about it after it's occurred, you're too late. So we really have to think about ways that we can be preventative and proactive, and we are coming at that in a lot of different ways. I know I've talked at this table about our PTA BIC committee and the work we did on just attendance this year for the course of the year, and that's something that we've got a lot of plans, and Dr. Tyrell, again, will talk about that in our planning, but, just that one simple topic can take up a lot of time and a lot of planning, and so all of these things take multiple years to get kind of up and running, and multiple viewpoints, and just really sticking with it and trying to move the mark. So I'm happy to answer questions about any of the data, and then I'll turn it over to Dr. Tyrell to talk about our plan moving forward.
Go ahead.
Well, thank you so much for providing such a detailed report. And I've already looked at the action plan. It's multifaceted, multidisciplinary, and it is an incredible approach that you're taking. And I just want to commend the whole team on looking at this just complex attendance and discipline issues. I did want to ask and just wanted to highlight a couple of things. When we talk about the disproportionality within the race aspect of the data, it's not just Black and African American students and Latino and Hispanic students, but it's also students that identify as two or more races. So I just want to make sure we include them as another group that we need to really pay attention to. And then the other piece is, what was a little bit surprising to me was to see in the disciplinary referral section, the Black and African American student ratio went up from last year. So we were in 2024-25, we were at 6.45 representation, whereas this last year we were at 7.31. So something has happened that has possibly exacerbated that situation. So I just wanted to highlight that it's a little bit more than what I had anticipated. So instead of going down, it's escalating. So those are just two things that I wanted to highlight. But again, so looking forward to seeing that action plan. And I would love to just add in a pre and post as soon as school starts, if there's a way to do a pre-assessment on implicit bias, and then see where staff is at the end of the year, and see if there's growth issues, areas of opportunity that maybe we can address. Or maybe it's a quarterly assessment, but anyway, just something to think about.
Yeah, I was thinking that that's been really important for us with our panorama survey data. That has really been what we've been using in the work that Dr. Tyrell was leading with our listening circles after that, having that pulse on kind of digging into that with the questions that the survey asks for our staff. And I think it's been important for us to provide that to our staff and to get that feedback, because it has allowed us to see where some of those gaps are, because a lot of that can come to us, right?
Sure.
As who we are as the adults working with each other and young people. And so that has helped us to really shape what we are doing to support our teachers. And so I know we'll be talking a little bit about that, and that's kind of where we went in terms of creating, moving up beyond just our implicit bias training, for example, that all staff move through, but we are all diversity training, just so we can look at those cultural competencies and be very reflective of who we are, of why things might be occurring, and how we can best support students. And so that's part of our work moving into this year with our staff. And so I'm hoping that those things will go down as teachers feel like they have more tools. Sure. Also the work that is ongoing for us with our restorative culture of belonging, of how we're able to respond and support our students, especially at that tier 1 level.
That's great to hear. So that 6-hour block of professional development is inclusive of all of that data gathering and kind of drilling down. That's fantastic. I wasn't aware of that. Thank you.
I just have a very, sorry to even ask this, but I don't really fully understand it. From the incidences, like, so if you're looking at, like, just taking the first line, the Asian, so in 24-25, there were 89 instances, and then it was 1.47%, but then we went down to 29 and it was 0.92. They're not proportionate, like, going from there. Is that the total instances?
It's two
Attendance
separate
versus
columns,
behavior,
attendance and
right?
I'm glad you
discipline.
said that.
Yeah, because,
Sorry.
oh no, I'm sorry.
So on the left side, that's the attendance referral incidents for the year, and on the right side, it's the behavior referrals.
The same
So it's
year.
two different
So
numbers.
they're not
Yeah.
they're not comparing years. In
It's
fact,
the-
I think,
the- yeah.
Joya, what you were I was gonna ask where you got those numbers. They're not different time periods, they're different.
Categories.
Categories, yes, sorry.
I'm a little slow there,
They're
okay.
both 24,
I had to look
25,
at it
but yeah.
twice too. I know, I had to look at it a couple
like,
times
I
when
gotta
I was
ask
reading it
I might need a
before, too.
redesign on the chart for next year.
Always another opportunity.
Always an opportunity to
Yeah.
improve. Seeing as the chart above compares 2 years, I can totally see. But yes, the left side is
Okay, sorry.
last year's attendance, and the right side is the last year's discipline.
Right.
Okay, a little slow there, but thank you for breaking it down for me. Makes a little more sense.
I will make, and I am going to make a note that I can make that clear.
Okay,
I
thank
should
you.
note too, and I think it's stated on here, but just to make sure it's perfectly clear, the groups that have the black bar, that just means the number of students is too low. We don't report
I was
because of
nailing that, sorry.
confidentiality. Okay. Just checking.
You got that one, right?
Thank you for that.
To
I was
that
like,
point, though, do we have numbers from last year to this year to compare?
Sure. Yeah, we can pull those.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's, I think that would be.
because I was just
But-
looking for the comparison of that.
Yeah.
And I think I would add to that comment, Tim, just that like, sometimes it's almost like you would want to go back and see a complete, like a 5-year.
Five-year plan?
And like
Okay.
really get a bigger picture, but I also just want to say like, I really appreciate what you guys have done and what you're trying to do here, because let's face it, I mean, the variables change every year. You're not dealing with, the same people, the same students. So it's like, you can still apply all the same procedures, and you can put really great policies and things like that in place. But there will always be different variables every year that impact and affect what
Right.
we're looking at with this data. So,
As well
but,
as interventions.
right. I mean, that's like kind of incredible, because that's what's remarkable here is to go from 58 to 9 is tremendous. So, really, really appreciate that. And obviously,
Can I interrupt, Carrie?
Yeah,
Sorry,
no,
just
go
really,
ahead.
I just don't want to forget this. We do have a disproportionality report that exists on our webpage too, so that will give you more very specific information about disproportionality. That's a
Right.
report we filed with the state. We're hoping at some point in the very near future, we don't have that report to report on anymore, but it really does that, and that has been different times based on the state, but now that is presented in the February board meeting, I believe, and then posted to the webpage. So if
Right.
anybody wants more information on that specific topic, that is in there.
And that would take into consideration just this school years, right? So whatever we're looking at here, that would be reported to the state for the February numbers?
Yes, it's year by year. And they do it based on, it changed, but I think now it's based on the numbers at the end of whatever school year, so 2024 numbers,
it.
2023.
Like in arrears kind of
I
thing.
think they kind of changed that, the requirements of that report somewhere in the middle, so it might not completely be apples to apples, but it's enough that it would give a lot more information on that. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, I just didn't want
No,
to forget that
right.
thought.
Yeah, because this, I mean, again, I was thinking all kinds of things too, and I'm trying to make my notes as you're presenting and try to come back to making the comments too as I'm thinking about it. But I mean, obviously, like the drug offenses are also significantly down. And I mean, that's remarkable as well. And I also want to know, one thing I was noticing is, I really appreciate that you break down a lot of the tactics and things that you're doing, like on an administrative level and with the staff. But I'm sure that what are we doing for our students very specifically too, that maybe helps or improves some of these, these behaviors. So love to know more about that. I know you're doing it, I hear about it, but I guess any chance you can to even maybe weave some of that into that, like what does that student component look like? What is the communication that we're telling, or what kind of information are we making available to our students that's helping them? Obviously, we're supporting them, but we must be giving them some education too that helps them make better choices and
Absolutely.
makes this a more productive school environment for them.
It's super individualized, honestly, when students find themselves in having difficulty with attendance or any behavior referral. Those are the things that our SST is particularly dialed into, and our building team, but they are part of that team. So that's a conversation that's happening on a very individualized basis for students, and taking in, I think, Joya, you said the word complex. That couldn't be more apt. So taking in all of the factors that lead to whatever is happening, whether it's an attendance issue or an attendance behavior combination, there's so many reasons for that, and it's why it's so difficult and why we can't just sort of cure it all, but that's how our teams do amazing work with that. They dig in, they find out all the factors that are adding up to what's going on for a student, and then try to offer support from a variety of aspects. There may be some academic things going on, there may be some home life things going on, there may be, all kinds of things. And so that really takes that individual approach, which is why we can't just look at the data in big, reports, and we can't just look at it individually. We have to do both, and I think our teams do a really good job of doing that individual problem solving. We keep expanding too. I'll put the plug in, our student services, more support. We have two of our two restorative intervention specialists that are new to our team. As just, as of last year, we have 4 new psychologists starting this year. So the resources that are available to our teams and to our students to address some of this too just continue to increase, which is huge. And we haven't even been able to see the dividends that has paid yet because it's been such a short. We're seeing some of the dividends already, but we will see much more as we go through.
And to build upon that, Carrie, to answer your question, I think like one of the biggest shifts that we've observed in the last 4 years here is a true shift to a restorative response in our AP office. And I'll talk a little bit about that, and that's not just restorative learning opportunities in place of traditional consequences. It's the language that we use. It's the way that we talk to students about incidents, the way that we come up with opportunities for students to learn from their mistakes, to repair harm, to try to make things right. And so I'll share a little bit of data about that, but I think those learning opportunities are abundant. Sometimes it's a third millennium module where a student's doing some independent work on an online platform. Sometimes it's writing a letter to someone that was harmed within the school community. Sometimes it's one of our APs facilitating a conference with a teacher or a staff member or even another student. And so it looks different in different circumstances, but those learning opportunities, really the hope is that those change behavior. They change behavior in a way that's different than just issuing traditional consequences. And what the data doesn't say, what you don't see from the data, you see our referrals, you don't see necessarily, besides for that data on exclusionary discipline, 58-9, which is a huge celebration, what you don't see is how our APs responded to each and every one of those referrals. And that's a story to be told that's not included in the quantitative data, but as somebody that has the opportunity to work very closely with our AP offices, I think it'd be hard to find any AP offices anywhere that truly enter from a restorative standpoint more than ours do. And we continue to build, we continue to learn. We're not perfect. We know that we have a lot of things to address within our data, but I think that's a huge celebration for us as we're entering this school year compared to where we were 3 or 4 years ago. We've learned a lot, and we're applying that learning in our work.
That's great.
If I could ask a question, kind of based on that, this data that we look at from last year to this year, how does it look per class, per level, too? It would be interesting to see if kids, as they're going through the system longer, are having less incidents because they've been in the system longer. Are some of these changes really because of kids that have learned over the time, or, to Gary's point, it's basically a 25% turnover every year of different kids that we have with this data. So I think it would be interesting to see per class level how they've changed from year to year.
Yeah, and the RIR team will share a little bit of how that looks, how those placements are RIR placements, not necessarily speaking to the full data set, but they'll share a little bit about how that looks at each grade level, which will give you a little snapshot. But certainly we could provide a breakdown by grade level as well when we're looking at both attendance and discipline referrals.
And too, with the attendance and the 7th tardy or greater, are these kids that it's kind of the pattern that they have? Can we identify this with feeder schools beforehand? Yeah, hey, there's kids that have these issues. There's something that can be done to try to get out in front of it. Sure. I'm guessing that it's not different kids every year that are doing this. A lot of these are the same kids year over year, would be my assumption.
And we do articulate with our associate schools, and that is one of the things that they share that information with us, and our teams do a lot of proactive work over the summer, even with the families of students coming in before they're full-blown LT students. There's already somebody reaching out from LT to say, hey, let's make sure we're getting you on the right path. We did present a lot of data through the PTA-BIC on attendance, and it is alarming that the pattern of poor attendance, once it starts early, it's often repeated, and so that's something that we're considering as we're addressing attendance and chronic absenteeism as a school. So it's certainly data that we've looked at. It's not in this report in that way, but we look at that. We look at each of the grade levels. We look at the challenges that different grades experience with attendance. You know, our seniors kind of stand out in my head towards the end. That gets a little tricky. Right, and so, but those are all things that contribute to our data, and as much as we can kind of say, okay, it's seniors on their way out, it's still something we have to address and something that we don't want that to be our climate and culture here. We want kids here. We want them as part of our learning community. So all of those things are things we're looking at in some way, shape, or form. But certainly if you want some of that information more specifically, we can get that too.
I guess the only other thing that I wanted to mention is, again, to Carrie's earlier point, our decrease in our pretty major violations, theft, tobacco violence, physical injury, that's, violence with and without physical injury, drug and alcohol offenses are huge. I think sometimes you'll hear from the other side of the RAR argument that we're just masking these right? The consequences, but the true definition, in my opinion, of discipline does not equal consequence. It's learning, right? So our whole point behind the initiatives that you're taking is to change behavior, not just hide consequences. So, and I know we're going to talk about this a little bit when we talk about our RIR, but eventually it'd be nice to be able to see what our recidivism rate is for the kids that are going through some of these programs to see truly are they making a big impact, which I imagine they would. So I commend you guys for all the work that you've done on the front end of this and pulling all this data together. I know it's a hard job to do, but I think it really does tell a pretty good tale of what's being done, which is amazing.
Yeah, thanks. Again, we're really proud of the gains we've made, and we also don't for a second minimize the areas that we need to keep really addressing and making sure that we're making improvements on. So appreciate that. It's a group effort. A lot of people put information into this. A lot of people work on the information that's presented. And again, you'll hear a ton from our team and from Dr. Tyrell on our plans for next year.
Great. So I'll just share a few things that are highlighted within the action plans and areas of focus and priority. We've already talked about a few of them. As Dr. Owen shared, it's a team effort. We're fortunate enough to work really closely with our building leadership team, which includes our assistant principals, our associate principals, our division chair for student services, athletics and activities. And this is work that really, it's a combination of work of all of those people and work that they all do. And so I feel really fortunate to be able to share this with you because there's a lot of people that really are behind these plans, and you'll get to hear from some important members of our team tonight. So Dr. Rowe talked a little bit about our implicit bias training and also our We Are Diversity training from a professional learning standpoint. We've been talking for several years about building a restorative culture of belonging. We have those school improvement days, which are those early release days, 11:30 dismissal for our students, and we'll be focusing on our restorative practices training for our certified staff during those days. So some of those topics are designing an affirming classroom environment, that's norms and agreements, physical space, creating an environment, co-creating an environment with procedures with some student voice involved as well, using intentional and affirming language, that's affective statements and questions, and also just the way in which we give feedback to students, elevating perspectives, so that's community building, utilizing circles, the way that we utilize discussion protocols in our class, and then bringing students' experience into the class. So that's really exciting. Our team's working on planning those sessions at this point in time. It really continues our professional learning series on building a restorative culture of belonging. Sarah Smith and Greg Gardner, our associate principals, participated in some pretty in-depth threat assessment training this summer. They became trainers, so they will provide training to our new student services team members and then refresher training for our administrative team and also those student services members that have been with us. So that's been very valuable training, and it'll be a really great resource to have people in-house that are able to train new staff and retrain staff that's been here. And then Dr. Rowe mentioned we are hoping to get all staff through the We Are Diversity training over the course of the next few years. We are taking the same approach with our youth mental health and first aid training, which we partner with NAMI on. So we have a few different series that we have a goal of really making sure that we have enough time so that all of our staff can receive those trainings over the course of the next few years. Really important trainings for our staff. You'll hear us talk a lot about student and staff voice. We'll have a continued emphasis on cultivating student and staff voice as we prioritize belonging. And then we plan to share some follow-up from our belonging listening circles. Obviously, there's some continued analysis of that feedback and development of action plans, but it's really important that we remember belonging is a journey, right? It's not something administer a survey, have a listening circle, develop a few action steps, and check, right? Like, as you create a culture where more people feel a higher sense of belonging, the target continues to move, and you continue to set that target so that you can create that experience for all of your students and staff. How do we cultivate voice, listening circles, committee participation, ways to solicit feedback, different advisory groups? So those are things that we'll continue to center and prioritize this year. Dr. Owens mentioned some of the programmatic improvements. You're all aware of those. Your support's been critical in expanding our co-teaching program, expanding our ML program, adding restorative intervention specialists, and now the newest expansion to student services is bringing our psychs onto our LT staff. So those are all really exciting programmatic improvements. And again, I know Dr. Owens said it. I'm really excited for you to hear from the RIR team. We believe that we've developed a program, and it's in the early stages, that's really the best anywhere. So super excited for you to hear from them. When we talk about school safety, certainly we'll continue to prioritize social emotional learning, creating restorative culture, and promoting Say Something. Say Something is really important and near and dear to us. It's built into our Freshman Experience Day presentation. Our freshmen, on their very first day at LT, on Freshman Experience Day, they learn about the importance of saying something, and they learn it from students who are in our Save Promise Club. They share with them the importance of creating those connections, finding their trusted adult, and saying something, sometimes when things aren't right, and sometimes when things are right within the school. It's built into our Welcome Week safety lesson. Say Something is a message that we share through all communication platforms, digital signage, social media, website, Speak Up Line, all of that. And then our Save Promise facilitates a Say Something week, which was a really fun week to commit to that really important youth violence prevention program. That's actually what it is. Like, it's not just an initiative, it's a violence prevention program. I think now's probably the best time to share that, and you all know this, nothing is more important to us than the safety of our students and staff. And each day we prioritize that, and we do that in many different ways. Our system of school safety is a coordinated approach that is about preparedness, positive relationships, building a culture of belonging, and truly shared responsibility. It's all of us who create a culture of belonging and a culture of safety here. It's our MTSS system. It's what our APs do in their offices with students. We have an LTHS safety committee. It's campus safety protocols. It's our threat assessment process, our response to crisis. We'll have our VCI drill at the beginning of the school year. It's preparation through drills, and certainly it's creating that culture of belonging that really starts with the relationships that we develop and the connectedness that we develop within our school community. Certainly part of school safety is protocols, and each year I give kind of an update on what we've done to prepare for the school year from a safety perspective. We've again added additional cameras, 50 plus, mostly to the exterior of our campuses, so we are at a point where we are almost at full coverage, interior and exterior. Most of the cameras that have been installed this year are exterior, with the exception of the new construction over at South Campus. We've updated our classroom flip charts that summarize our emergency response plans to now include our cardiac emergency response plan. South Campus maps will be updated following construction, so that those will be updated once building construction has completed. Our system of school safety website's been updated this summer and is really a great tool for us to be able to share with our community at the beginning of the school year and throughout. Our critical incident manual is finalized each year. We finalize our drill dates so that staff, and then we make those public to students and families as the dates approach. They know when we're going to be doing our evacuation drills, our severe weather, and our VCI drill. I always include a safety update as part of my welcome back communication. If we're going to say that safety is the most important thing that we do, then we have to make sure that we center that right at the beginning of the school year. Safety training is also part of our beginning of the year plans with new teachers, certified staff, non-certified staff as well. We'll have a continued emphasis on hallway presence and supervision, and are always looking to increase our number of essays to make sure that we have appropriate coverage on our campuses. And we'll continue to emphasize the importance of staff and student identification. That's something that we've done over the course of the last few years, and honestly, that contributes to the increase in referrals for the no ID on students. I think that was, few hundred increase.
Yeah.
When you emphasize something and you prioritize it, the other thing that contributes to that is our scanning process, where we scan students in who arrive after 7:45 in the morning. So if they don't have an ID, we know it when they're walking in at 7:45 and Mr. Radovich is looking to scan them in. So there's elements to the increase in referral that are directly related to some of the things that we're prioritizing. And our associate principals maintain safety checklists. So they maintain safety checklists so that they can quarterly meet with appropriate people, do their checks with building and grounds, and make sure that room checks are completed, those types of things as well. So those are just some of the things from a safety standpoint that have been part of our preparation, the building leadership team's preparation for the school year. When we talk about attendance, so Dr. Owens referenced that attendance was our topic for PTA BIC last year, and we decided that we were going to have an all-in focus on communication. Attendance is something that we talk about every meeting all throughout the year with our building leadership team. We analyze data, we talk about our interventions, we talk about student support, sometimes groups of students, sometimes individual student support. So we've developed a campaign. We are present, we are engaged, and we are LT, and that will be our attendance campaign this year. So let me tell you a little bit about the communications that are part of that campaign. Hopefully everybody gets sick of seeing it. That's like the point of a campaign, right? So we will be sending weekly progress report. This came up at PTA BIC and was a recommendation of one of our committee members. We'll be sending weekly progress report emails to parents and guardians for all students that will give an update on grades in every class, absences to every class, and tardies to every class. So that will start after Labor Day. We've created attendance roadmaps for families, teachers, student support teams, coaches and sponsors, and student assistants, which include important information regarding each of those roles, role in promoting positive student attendance behavior. So we'll be sharing those roadmaps with appropriate groups throughout the course of the beginning of the school year. Importance of attendance will be highlighted within presentations and meetings. We haven't exactly hit this mark before, but when I give my welcome for our open houses, we'll find a way to incorporate a couple of notes about positive attendance behaviors and how important that is within our new freshman parent and guardian meeting at open house. We'll talk a little bit about attendance, all of our transition meetings for the class of 30, which sounds crazy that it's going to be class of 30 that's transitioning to LT. In addition, I know, right? In addition to, I know Dr. Owens has done a tremendous amount of work on our student handbook, which has all attendance, important attendance information in it. We've also pulled out that information and created an attendance handbook, an attendance website, so all of that information is even more accessible for families. So if they want to go to the handbook, they can, but we've created an attendance handbook and website that we'll be sharing with families and students as well. Regular communication regarding the importance of attendance will be visible within our school community, flyers, banners, social media posts, digital signage, all of that. I will continue sharing quarterly attendance and behavior updates with our community. Those have been really well received over the last few years, so we'll continue to share data throughout the course of this year. And then in responsive fashion, we'll continue sending emails and letters for when students are absent, what adds up to 3 full days, 7 full days. At the end of each quarter, we'll send 2 different communications, a communication for those students who have been in attendance over 90% of all days, and a communication to those who are currently chronically absent based on that previous quarter's attendance. And then, of course, we will continue having attendance meetings. Those happen in a lot of different spots with members of our student support teams. Sometimes it's counselor, sometimes it's social worker, sometimes it's assistant principal. And those meetings look different depending on the circumstance. We will hopefully this year be able to intervene a little bit early in the absence continuum with our social workers. So that's something that we have desire to do this year. That came a little bit later in the continuum. We're going to do that a little bit earlier and are working with our student support teams to determine kind of where that comes within the continuum. And we're not able to do things like that if we don't have the resources and the personnel within student services. So we couldn't have talked about that 4 years ago. ago. Now we're at a point where we can talk about really utilizing the expertise of our social workers. The other thing that I think is really exciting, and the RIR team will share a little bit, we are in the process of developing kind of an attendance support room model, and we won't be able to implement it across the board in response to unexcused absences or like high numbers of tardies, but we're hoping to be able to start utilizing an attendance support room as a restorative learning opportunity instead of traditional consequences when we're talking about students with many absences, unexcused absences, tardies. So hopefully that's something that we see some success with, because to be honest, traditional consequences, they just don't work, right? They don't change behavior, and we're hoping to see a change in behavior when we're able to implement, and the team will share a little bit more about that. When we talk about behavior and discipline, certainly we'll continue to communicate discipline data, improvement plans to all groups. We'll have continued implementation of our restorative intervention room. I shared a bit about our APs really truly taking a restorative approach at all times. As I shared, it's everything that they do, from the language, the way they process with students, the relationships that they have with students. Last year, and I look forward to bringing more robust data about this, but last year, about midway through the year, I think it was at the beginning of the semester, we created within our Infinite Campus system, like we wanted a way to be able to track what responses are restorative that our APs are implementing in response to student behavior incidents or referrals. And so last year, we have just under 300 responses that were restorative in nature, and that's just second semester. So we're gonna have a more coordinated approach to like collecting that data this year. So next year's presentation, we'll be able to tell that story, like what were those restorative responses out of our AP offices, and what did that data look like compared to at least second semester this year. So that's really exciting. And then just one other note before I turn it over to Leslie to introduce, Dr. Owens to introduce the team. This past year, we implemented our new activities, co-curricular activities, athletics code of conduct. And we feel like that was a really successful implementation. Last year in 24-25, we had approximately, and I can get the numbers for you, but approximately half as many code violations as we did in 23-24. Also, our restorative intervention specialist helped with a restorative response in each one of those incidents. So prior to having our RIR spaces, our athletics and activities director would either partner with an outside organization or come up with a learning opportunity that kind of accompanied the more traditional disciplinary response within the code. We were able to capitalize on the expertise of our specialist in response to code violations, which was really helpful. And we felt like the communication was really clear. There wasn't a lot of confusion about the new code or, what was outlined within the handbook. So I think that was really successful, and obviously we'll continue to implement that code that I think just like reflects our mindset in general about, being more restorative in nature. So that was a lot, and it was fast, but I, really proud of the progress we've made. No doubt, we have a lot of work to do. We're very transparent about that work. We're transparent about the disproportionality that exists. We believe that we have really good plans to address some of our areas of concern, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have before we turn it over to the team.
Can I just, can I please, seriously, I did go to as you're talking about the website, and like just seeing all these resources and having this information so much more easily accessible to any parent is tremendous, and probably, in some way I'm being dramatic by saying life-saving, but it kind of is. It's time-saving maybe too for parents, but also like to help our kids, make sure that they're able to come here and learn and feel like they want to be here and can, I know, again, like I say this all the time, and I do mean it. A lot of times I think it's easy to just think kid does not want to go to school because they just want to be lazy or they don't want to go to school. And I know that's not the case at all with so many of our students and so many of our families. So I've seen it all year long and watch you guys putting this stuff together, but like having it here centralized too visually really is helpful. But hearing you talk about it, I mean, I'm pumped. I'm super excited. I think when you guys drill down and you see something that you feel like we really need to address, you put all heart and soul and time and effort into it, and you continue to do it. So very, very, very much appreciate that you guys have gone to the lengths to put this together and to be working so hard on something that is a crisis for, across the nation, and really taking it seriously here and doing so much for our community that way.
Thank you.
So thank you. That's really all I want to say.
Well, I mean, and I can just chime, like, I think having been on the board, I don't even know how many years it is. A long time. Yeah, but I mean, I remember when we didn't have like this conversation, so I think this is so great that we are having this conversation. And really, I think important to reflect on how far we've come. I think we always look at how far do we have to go, but I think we need to pause and think about how far we've come. And the fact that this is even a discussion here today is great to even have that. So, I appreciate it.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess my only question would be, the thing that really resonates with me, I know we talked about this in I always call it the PTABIC, but I don't know, PTABIC. I'm really excited about the weekly, and I get it, we're gonna annoy some people, but sometimes, right? Sometimes that annoyance will make some significant changes. So I guess my question is, for those weekly emails, is that an opt-in, opt-out? How will that work?
We've went back, and this is something that we've talked about a lot, and we have a lot of different communications, and prior to this year, we had a lot of different opt-out lists, is this person opting out or not getting the 3-day letter, the 7-day letter, the quarterly letter, the weekly email?
Yeah.
We really feel strongly about committing to sending those emails to all of our families.
Okay.
And there may be families that have extremely
Requests.
extenuating circumstances that we feel like it's probably creating more harm than
Yep,
good to
yep.
send those emails or communications to, and we'll handle those individually. But we are going to really make an effort to send those communications to all of our families.
Okay. And the emails will have, I think I wrote down that you were gonna do attendance, tardies, grades,
Yep, that's it.
discipline, just those three?
Yes, just
Okay.
those three to start.
Okay. Very
Yep.
good.
Breakdown by class, so,
And I'll get it every week.
yeah,
I love it. Okay.
there you go.
Not with the goal of annoyance, but
Right.
with the goal of transparent communication.
But again,
Exactly,
I mean, I think the point of that, though, really is, sometimes we let our kids, once they're in high school, we let that leash out a little bit, right? And sometimes we don't really know all the ins and outs of the tardies and things. I think, of course, we can get onto the app and do that, right? But I think it's not an annoyance, right? I understand it's a supportive thing. But I really do think it has the potential to make some pretty significant, hopefully, changes with our families.
Well, and the research shows that just families being aware, parents and guardians being aware of the number of absences that students have, that makes a difference in itself. And now people won't need to go looking for the information, right?
Right.
We're gonna send it to them. They'll know that they're gonna get that weekly email.
Yeah.
Might take some fine tuning at the beginning to make
Yeah.
sure that, all the technology systems are working, but people will be able to count on it. They'll see that report and it'll be right there for them.
That's great.
Dinner time would be interesting.
Yeah.
And my one question is, when you send that report out, will it have something in there that explains to them, how many days is too much? Does that make sense? Do you know what I'm saying, in there? Because when you look at chronic absenteeism and you have the amount, I mean, that, we all know it because we sit here. But will the average parent know that, or will there be some reference in there?
Yeah.
Because what does 4 days mean to them versus 14? They might not think
Right.
you know what I mean, to have some reference for that.
We have that I don't know that the weekly emails will have that. We could probably build some sort of link that's attached that's more general, like some sort of attendance tracker. But we definitely have that information in our 3- and 7-day letter, and then our quarterly
But
letter as well.
before they even get that,
Yeah.
if you're planning it, to think, oh my gosh, you were, I don't know, just speaking from my personal, oh, maybe you were out, just an example, you were out for 4 days with the flu, and then you are gonna go to a soccer tournament for 2 days. But but I might not get that letter until the soccer tournament, but that might impact my decision upon the soccer tournament if I had more information
Yeah,
going into it.
we can definitely look
I think that might
at
be a
it.
great reference point.
Yeah.
Because
We-
even though I know it's on the website, I think you gotta have it
Yeah.
kind of bold right there.
We can definitely look and see what we might be able to add to those weekly updates to give people a perspective. Yeah.
That would be great, I think.
And interventions, because you're already doing that, right? On your letters, you're always saying, if you're looking for resources or support, here's the link you
Yep.
can go to.
Yep.
They can go
That'll-
right to this amazing website.
Yeah, right.
Right, but I mean, but
I'm
here's the
seeing it
thing,
right here. so.
that's many more
Yeah.
steps down the way.
Right, right.
We are gonna be like, oh, we're fine, because it's 4 days.
Yeah.
Well, sure, but
Yeah.
you don't want to have it also be too long. We know what the reading rate is of somebody if you have to go scroll.
I think it could be a sentence.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm
We
saying,
can-
like,
we can figure out a way to
For
work
more
something in.
information.
I don't think anybody's
I'm
gonna
teasing you,
hyperlink
I'm
it.
teasing
I mean,
you.
I don't know.
Oh, I know,
Maybe they
But-
will, and I'm underestimating people,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, we can look at, we'll talk about that
Okay.
as, with the
That
team
was
and
just
figure
my-
out what we might be able to add.
my parent thought, does that make?
Parent hat.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I have
Okay.
a question about the implicit bias training. It says provided to new staff. Is that like you take it one time and then you don't take it again?
So
Or how does that
basically,
work?
yeah, so the state asked that we have a training and many other trainings. And so 2 years ago, we moved our entire staff through that training. And so now each year with our new teachers, when they're being onboarded right now, we kind of have a foundation training, number one, that they'll actually go to tomorrow, kind of looking at our values and what belonging and equity mean for us as a district. So we want to be very intentional in that conversation and setting that foundation for them. And then later in the year, we'll have a 90-minute training. We'll kind of go through that. We also go through, and it's a really wonderful part of the work out of our HR office, where we have our hiring for equity and implicit bias training that we go through with every team that is coming on every single time. And then through the work that we've done with our feedback, primarily through Panorama over the last couple of years with the feedback from our staff, we wanted to create a more in-depth training for them, where we worked with the ROE to create that 6-hour training. So again, it's how are we really incorporating those into the action steps that we're taking every day. So hopefully it's that building effect, and also in many other ways that we come back to these things, concepts, because it's really connected to belonging, equity, SEL, it's everything. So I hope that.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah.
You're welcome. And we'll probably circle back again and continue to build on the skills that our teams need.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions about the data or the action plan? All right,
Alrighty.
we're gonna turn it over then to
All right.
our guest speakers today. I don't know the order, so I'll just introduce you guys and then come on up. We've got Sarah Smith, our associate principal here at North Campus. We've got Brian Radovich, our assistant principal for the class of, thank you, 26. Terriana Bland is one of our intervention specialists, and Maya Wallen is one of our other intervention specialists. So Terriana's here at North Campus, and Maya is at South Campus. So they're going to present to us the initial data on our RIR, which we just implemented a year ago. It seems like longer.
Well, thank you everyone for having us here today. We are so proud to be here tonight to share about the RIR program and all that we've learned throughout its first year. As Dr. Owens mentioned, I am here with some fantastic people who have been instrumental in both the creation of RIR and the day-to-day functioning. So we really believe that this program has made a difference in the lives of our students in terms of the connection to school and the people within it, as well as the skills and lessons that students take with them in order to, as Mr. Alboris said, to change behavior. It is our hope that you leave here tonight with a deeper understanding of what the RIR is and the student experience within it, start to finish. From the situation that leads to the RIR placement, to what students are doing there all day, through their reentry back into the classroom and support beyond. As we get into this presentation tonight, it's important to know that no two stories are alike. These placements, while there are some anchors, are personalized for each student based on their behavior, their background, their needs, their goals. More broadly, we hope to show you how these rooms create a culture of belonging for students, both in the RIR and the school at large. And while some situations still call for traditional discipline, right, in school and out of school suspension, the consequences that RIR brings ensures that students really sit with their choices. It holds them accountable, and it connects the consequence to the behavior. And finally, we'll show you that this experience is all about learning and skill building. This program is a classroom in and of itself with a focus on student growth. And we'll show you some data that supports that here this evening. But first, let's go ahead and start at the beginning. So what is RIR? This program is designed to support students in learning from different types of disciplinary incidents while ensuring that they remain connected to the school community. It keeps them in school within a supportive environment, learning from those decisions during their 1 to 3 day placement. Students' time within the RIR is very much about them accepting responsibility for their actions, understanding the impact that their decision has had on others and themselves, and connecting them with the right resources, both those in school and out of school. During this programming, students also work closely not only with our RIR specialists and the paraeducator, but with many members of their SST team, their teachers, and of course outside resources as needed. So before we get deeper into what's happening during the RIR experience, let's first take a look at some quick data to round out our understanding of year one. So in total, we had 141 students experience the RIR during this past school year. And as you can see, the distribution among grade levels was relatively equivalent, almost identical actually, with the exception of the junior class who saw only 22 students participate. Across those 141 RIR participants, they collectively experienced a total of 200 placements. Our juniors who saw a lower number of classmates experience the RIR had a higher placement rate per student than other classes, suggesting a smaller group of students that needed more frequent intervention. Now, of course, we would love to stand here tonight and say that there is no recidivism in the RIR, that an RIR placement all but ensures that students use the skills learned to prevent another situation. But we also know that that's not realistic. They are kids who make mistakes, and sometimes more than once. Oftentimes, though, in a different category of instance, which Mr. Radovich will talk about in a minute. It's our response to this behavior that has changed. This program allows us to keep our students in school when they've made a mistake, learning from what happened. In total, we had 38 students who were in RIR more than once. 18 of those 38, however, would not even be included in that number, meaning that they would only have one placement if this programming didn't also include attendance support. And attendance, as we've already talked about here tonight, is certainly a priority area for our district because we know how important it is for our kids to be here. So, as you would expect, the RIR disproportionality data mirrors that of LT's overall disciplinary data that was shared a bit ago, as this program is a primary intervention used with attendance and discipline referrals. So that is a bit about who is in the room and the students that we cared for in year one. Now allow us to take you through this experience sequentially, starting with the intersection of this programming and the AP office, courtesy of Mr. Red.
Thank you, Sarah. So I'm going to walk you through what the placement looks like from the AP office, and all of these steps are really designed so that that experience for the student is successful. So just like any other behavioral incident that happens, the AP is going to give the student due process, right? We're going to fully investigate, go through our witnesses, figure out what exactly happened within that incident to create a system of interventions for that student. Once we decide that, the restorative intervention room is going to be our intervention that's used. That's when the assistant principal will reach out and contact the family and give them a brief introduction of what that experience will look like. That could be a 1 to 3 day placement too, so those conversations look a little bit different. During that conversation too, that's when we set up the intake meeting if it is a 3 day placement. So we establish that, have the parent come in, and we'll talk a little bit about the intake here in a few minutes. Once we connect with the family, we have that experience that's set up for the restorative intervention room. That's when the AP will meet with the RIR specialist at their campus. So Terriana and I worked very closely to talk about what led the student into this situation, what the incident looked like, and some of the history too. So her and I will troubleshoot and figure out what does this plan look like, right? What is going to help the student learn best, right? What modules? Is there going to be a circle with a teacher? I know Dr. Tyrell talked about some of those instances. Is it going to be a circle within the student, a classroom? So there's various things that we talk about to try to make a plan together. Once we have that conversation, then I go to my SST team as well, the counselor and social worker that are a part of that student's experience too are filled in because they'll be also touching base with the student during their time within the RIR and visiting them. That also could include case manager too, if the student is special education. It could include some representatives from ML too, if the student's in the ML population. And then the last thing that we do is we send out a notification then to teachers about that student being in the RIR. So that will include information about where they are, where they can find them, what the duration is for that, so that we don't lose that academic experience, right? We want to make sure that kids don't get caught behind on their work while they're in the RIR. So a lot of our teachers are really awesome too of coming down to the space, interacting in person with the students, giving them some tips and materials that they may need while they're down there. So that's very important to us to make that connection with the teacher as well. And we'll talk a little bit more about the intake and what that looks like after. But before I hand it over to Ms. Bland, I wanted to just take a look at some of the most common referral reasons that we have for the RIR in this past year. Confrontations were 29% of all referrals. Attendance were 19.5% of all referrals. No-show detentions were 17.5%. And then substances were 14.5%. So just to break that down a little bit for you, confrontations and substances, those would be more of our major offenses, right? Our 3-day placements when we're talking about the whole intake, reentry, and the whole process that they would go through. The attendance and no-shows are more of that one-day experience, where traditionally we had 1 day of in-school suspension where students really didn't get enough programming, right? So now what we're able to do is have 1 day in the restorative intervention room with our specialists processing through more than they would, under a traditional type of consequence. So that's why those attendance and no-shows are on there as well, and there's higher numbers there within our 4. These are not for all students, right? These are students where we've exhausted a lot of our traditional consequences when it comes to attendance. Tardies, for example, they would have to get to 10 tardies within a class for us to consider an RIR placement. So those cases are intensive cases within those 1-day placements that we would program for a student. Now I'm going to hand it over to Ms. Bland to talk a little bit about the intake.
Thank you, Mr. Radovich. So the intake meeting is an opportunity for us to turn a punitive situation into a positive one. Our intake meeting begins with us sharing our philosophy and our expectations. These are the goals that outline our program. As opposed to us suspending a student, we're actually leaning into the students and learning more about them as individuals, and then working with them to help them develop personally and in light of the situation. So our meeting is held in person in the morning in a conference room where our members of the Students SS team are present, including our parents, guardians, APs, case managers, social workers, counselors, the specialists, and the students. It's an opportunity to learn more about the student and what their concerns are moving into the space, and helping them to develop a plan and set them up for success as they transition into our rooms. The Student Success Plan is an opportunity for us to go over what is actually expected. Conversations, again, begin with learning about the student. Following, the conversations are about the infraction. For students with a substance violation, our team requests a release of information in the meeting, and we ask the students to sign them at that time as well. And the parents are invited to attend a weekly virtual support group through Rosecrans. So that's been a really great partnership that we've had with them, specific to our students that need support surrounding substance. By the closing of these meetings, it's really cool. There is an evident shift from apprehension to partnership. That is why the story doesn't end with the infraction. It's so much more. Maya?
So I'm just going to talk a little bit about what happens in the restorative intervention room after that intake meeting. The underlying goals of the student experience are to build connection, build skills, and understand the impact of their behavior. The first thing we have them do is a student questionnaire, which helps guide the individual conversations that we have about the student's experience in school and the incident that led to their RIR placement. In our one-to-one conversations, we help the students process the incident and reflect on their behavior, utilizing the restorative questions that are: what happened? What were you thinking at the time? What have you thought about since the incident? Who has been affected by your actions and in what way? And what do you think you need to do to make things right? Activities and assignments in the RIR are determined by the student's personalized success plan. Every student will complete a psychoeducational program that is aligned to the incident on Third Millennium Classrooms, which is an evidence-based online prevention and intervention platform. After they complete that program, we go over the lesson and their personalized results together in order to check for understanding and takeaways. Additionally, we address other components of social emotional learning based on CASEL's 5 competencies of self-management, self-awareness, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. Again, the activities and the lessons that we're teaching them are really personalized to that student. Every student also completes a lesson on goal setting and develops their own SMART goal that they will work towards when they leave the RIR room. For substance use infractions, we facilitate the screening with Rosecrance. Coordinating these screenings within the RIR ensures collaboration and follow-up opportunities are taking place. Again, depending on the incident, we will facilitate a restorative conversation or activity. This could be an apology, a restorative conversation between the students or with staff, or other type of reparation. Throughout the time in RIR, students are also completing academic assignments and maintaining contact with their teachers. The student completes a daily reflection each day, which helps reinforce the learning and goals that they're working on and helps them prepare for the reentry meeting.
Unlike the intake meeting where adults are primarily speaking, the reentry meeting is designed to be student-led. They're using their own words, not ours, to highlight what their experience has been like in the RIR. The meetings occur on the last day of a student's placement, and students share the goals that they created, and for example, if they were in part of a restorative conversation, what that experience was like for them, how it felt to share their story, what it was like and how did it feel to hear someone else's story, and what did they actually do to make amends about the situation. Students also provide feedback through a couple different forms. Data is collected through our student exit forms, which students actually rate their experience coming out of RIR, and then they also provide us with anecdotal data as well. The reentry form actually prompts a transition email to teachers. So the intent behind this is for students to feel comfortable about their transition back into the classrooms, and for the teachers on the receiving end to be able to know and understand how the student wants to actually transition into their space. The reentry meeting also provides an opportunity for the student to express who they can go to for support, who are their trusted adults in the building when they're having a bad day, they just need some help, they're in trouble, or they're in a crisis. And the students know that they will receive check-ins throughout the remainder of the school year through the RIR. And now I'll turn it back over to Sarah.
So one of the things we're most proud of is what our students say about their experience. Student survey results have really been overwhelmingly positive and have provided some valuable insight into the impact and effectiveness of the program. So we had 136 students complete an end of semester survey, the results of which you see here. So the survey captures their perspective on the impact that the learning within RIR has had on their overall student experience in the time since their placement ended. So as you can see, all responses scored above a 4 on a 5-point scale and reveal that there is a whole lot to celebrate about this programming. One standout statistic here is that these students believe that what was learned during their experience has guided their behavior moving forward at a rate of 4.24. Perhaps most significant of all, though, is that 126 of the 136 students that took this survey say that they would recommend the RIR program to peers in a similar situation. 126. And as you might imagine, it's likely that not all 126 were super excited about when things were first unfolding. That is where it ended. You can also read here, in the students' own words, what they said when asked to expound on why they'd recommend RIR. Some were succinct and to the point, with one simply saying, because it works. Others reflected on how RIR helps them to think about and better understand their actions, formulate plans to change behavior, and see things from another point of view. So as we close up tonight, we also wanted to give a brief mention to just some of the other things that are happening in RIR. Hopefully you've gotten a sense for the significant amount of collaboration that happens among our specialists, student support teams, and teachers. There's also a great deal of teamwork with Tapestry advocates, reentry, special education, ML, and outside professionals. Our specialists also engage in regular check-ins, as Ms. Bland mentioned, in the week following placement, and then regularly from there, they have both formal and informal follow-ups with these students to discuss their progress and just to generally connect and check in. Oftentimes, these students come back in on their own to check in themselves or to seek assistance, which is a testament to the relationships and the support and the safe space that they have created here. Maya and Tariana also took time this year to plan transition days. South Campus hosted what we affectionately called Tariana Day, an opportunity for Tariana to connect with our South Campus RIR students and preview the support that they will continue to have in North Campus. And finally, though certainly not least of all, Maya and Tariana worked with the SSTs to identify students who teams felt may struggle with attendance and or behavior off the bat. So this allowed our specialists to proactively connect with these kids and invite them to participate in regular groups, which they did throughout the year. And in response to this year's data, specifically to the number of students who we know were there for attendance programming, as Dr. Tyrell mentioned, we are modifying our RIR plans and adding that attendance support room to the menu of interventions. This has been designed as a short-term restorative intervention for students experiencing chronic tardiness and absenteeism. So obviously some real celebrations, so much to be proud of. And of course, we also acknowledge that this year has brought challenges despite best laid plans, but we are so encouraged by what is being built here and by how kids are feeling about their experience. We've shared lots of bits of data throughout the presentation, but one last number we will leave you with is this, 358. 358 total days that our students spent in one of our RIR rooms, wrapped in support, confronting what happened and why, and not simply at home. And that feels worth celebrating. So we want to thank you, our Board of Education, for your continued support that allows us to grow and sustain programs like the Restorative Intervention Room that truly make a difference for our school community. Thank you.
Nice.
Any questions?
That's great.
That's huge.
Yeah, it's just a wealth of information. It's commendable. It is just incredible the amount of collaboration that you're all doing to get to this point and seeing such great feedback from students. I think that was the most compelling for me, just to see their response to how they experienced the room, and then also just their verbatims. So thank you. Thank you for all that you're doing. I do have just two quick things that I just didn't quite understand. I'm hoping you could help me clarify. I didn't know that the parents have access to a virtual online education session when the students, and I apologize, my notes are like all over the place because I was trying to write. But when the students are in the 3-day placement, parents are invited to join a virtual education component?
Absolutely. Yeah, so thank you for your question, first and foremost. So for students that have a substance violation, they're in the RIR for typically a 3-day placement. At that intake meeting, we offer that release of information that I mentioned. So we are asking right then and there, while the parent is there and the student as well, for them to sign a release of information first and foremost, for our screener to be able to have and open that conversation about what their substance has looked like. It's pretty much a great resource for background information and determining what would be the appropriate next step outside of school to be able to provide treatment for that student. Following that conversation and after the release of information has been signed, Rosecrans also offers what they call a virtual parent cafe. It's on their flyer. We can provide it for you as well after this presentation. But it's a weekly virtual support group specific for parents. And again, it's run by Rosecrans clinicians, so you're getting trained professionals outside of school to be able to partner with you as a parent in conjunction with whatever it is that your son may be experiencing. So it's a great opportunity for not only the parent to receive support, but then if our screener. I'm thinking of her name. We all love her very dearly. Yes, she's so sweet. I didn't want to say her name out loud because I wasn't sure, because everything's recorded. But that is her name. She is wonderful. We have all enjoyed partnering with her. And so specific to students, she is great with breaking down, just going through their history, what their usage has looked like, and then she will share that information with Maya and I, who will also give that updates to Mr. Radovich and Mrs. Smith as well. If she is recommending outpatient services, if she's recommending teletherapy, she works very closely with those students, and the virtual parent cafe is outside of that support. So if a parent were to come to Sandy and say, you know, I think I would love some additional support, she has been phenomenal. She bends over backwards to have that conversation with you as a parent and offer that support in conjunction with the care for that student. Again, all of it is very, very much so individualized when a student has a substance violation, and it's treated with tremendous care.
We've had a partnership with Rosecrans for quite some time, and it's kind of taken different forms depending on the year and the resources, but this is sort of a new arm for us given the connection with the RIR, so.
I think it's phenomenal. Is it available in multiple languages, do you know? And I can look into this separately, but I was just curious. It's the virtual cafe.
That is a great question. I can look into it and get back to you.
That'd be great. And then if there is any additional need for support for parents, one of the things I was going to mention and ask, the affirmative language that's being used just in general, holistically, are those, is that something that could be made available to parents just as a additional support? Yeah. That language just, I think if we're all talking the same way and reaffirming, you know, positive behavior, I think it would be phenomenal for the student to start to realize, okay, wait, everyone is saying the same thing and, you know, just helping me grow.
Absolutely, and in fact, the best practice I get with affective statements and affirmative language are with my 2- and 4-year-old at home. I have to exercise really good patience and restraint and like intentionality, but truly, it's something that we can easily share with our community because that using language is a foundation, right? So yeah, we can share that.
That'd be great. Thank you. Great job.
Thank you.
I just want to say, I was really touched when you said the 358 days, that these were days that the students were not at home, they were feeling, embraced and supported, and I think that's really important. And really, that's how things change, is wanting to belong. So I thought that was really, although it's 358 days, it could be viewed one way, I think it's viewed very positively about what the alternative would be.
They're working hard in there too.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it was great, so I like that.
Thank you.
Sitting at home in your room.
Yeah, well,
Disconnected to anybody and.
Right.
Or
Yeah.
doing
That
Or your
too.
parent not at
Yes.
home because they are working
They're
and
working,
there's not,
right, and there's
you can't process it
no
maybe in the same
interaction
ways.
or,
Right.
yeah.
I don't know, I
Having
thought that was really
conversations is really important, so.
a key thing.
I just had, and I agree with what everybody's been saying. We have this program in our district, and we've seen long-term those recidivism rates go down as time goes on. 100% agree. It's much better than kids sitting at home and not really learning anything, except, unless, obviously our parents are doing a good job balancing that as well, but it also gives us an opportunity to share some with your expertise or your social workers to be able to provide it. Just a couple clarifying questions about the expectations for the program. So if there, maybe you could just speak to this. What makes a determination between a 1-day RIR versus a 3-day RIR?
Brian, you want to take that?
Sure. I think it's just the nature of the offense, right?
Okay.
When you look at the data too and what those major offenses are, those are more our 3-day placements.
Okay.
One comes from more of those attendance-based that I was talking about, or no-shows. 2 is kind of the hybrid, right? We've used it in some situations maybe that we didn't feel went all the way to 3, but maybe we're a little bit more than 1. So it gives us a little flexibility in some of those cases. Also, students having some trouble processing really what's going on and repairing the harm and getting back in the place where we want them to be.
Okay. And then if they're not being successful in that, or they're refusing to do it, does it then just result to an out-of-school suspension?
It could. Most of our students came around this year.
Okay.
Really. I mean, our specialists are awesome. And we wait it out, right? Sometimes they're not ready. So
Okay.
they're able to work on that academic work or some of that programming. And I had a couple cases that I didn't think would work out, but eventually the students rose to the occasion, and they did great within their re-entry meeting. So I can recall maybe a day where a student could make it through that day and came back and completed the program. So try to work the best we can with those students and families when those situations arise, but I'd say we didn't have too much at North Campus this past year.
Okay. And then the ones that, I think you said 38 were in there more than once, can they be in there more than once for the same offense, or are there any limitations for them coming back to do this program again?
Yeah, I can tell you that we had 5 in there for some type of confrontation more than once.
Okay.
And 2 in there for substance, one who ended up being outplaced because he needed more support than we could give, and a similar situation, but still in our care with the second person. So we kind of started this year with this rough idea that, like, yes, we want to make it available more than once, but the general outline was for different types of infractions.
Okay.
And then as we looked at the cases individually, right, in those 7 instances, felt like that was appropriate.
Okay, very good. And then the attendance support room, can you talk a little bit about what that's gonna look like?
Yeah. So the idea is modeled after our academic support rooms. Academic supports are these 2-week placements, right, where students are assigned. We're thinking of this as a 1-week placement, but for the full period instead of dividing it with lunch, right? We would use the Ames curriculum, similar to what Maya and Tariana have used within their groups for attendance this year. And it would just be, right, targeted, working on that skill building, getting at the root of why they're not coming to school, obviously the relationship building component. And then when members of our student services team are running the larger attendance groups this year, that's a bit of a shift, recommending when appropriate that those kids who kind of graduate from the support room to then get that support through those groups.
Very cool. I'm thrilled. I mean, I think this has been a great program ever since the very beginning. I think the fact that we've got the support to be able to do that, the personnel to make it happen is, I mean, I think it's amazing. I think it's wonderful. Thank you.
It's a lot to be proud of.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
so
you
much.
guys, thanks for taking some time to listen to tell the story.
That concludes our report. That was a lot. Welcome back. We all have to process through that maybe in the RIR for a while. No, we're just so thankful for the support that we've received from the Board of Education, our community, and our staff members who have, this is new. This is all new to our school community, and people have really embraced it with open arms and are seeing how it's changing students' trajectories here. So we're excited for year 1. I think this is overwhelmingly positive data, and I know given the individuals you see before you, that it's going to keep going and getting better. So, again, if any other questions, but we're just so thrilled.
Thank you
guys for being here.
Yes,
Thank you.
Great job.
All right, so our next item is the first reading and review of Press 119 policy recommendations. Dr. Waterman.
Yeah, real quickly, I'll just say as a reminder, press issues are published about 3 to 4 times a year. We just had one though in June, and right after the last June board meeting, Press 119 came out. I think it was within a couple of days. So these, of course, include updates related to changes in state, federal law, or as well as regulations or current case law that may affect board policy. As we know, we subscribe to a program called Press Plus. This allows IASB to isolate any policies from the recent issue that are related to our district for review. And as we always say, we always send them to Jennifer Rosenberg from Hodges so that she can provide some, put a legal lens on it and provide some recommendations. Typically, more often than not, the recommendation is to adopt the press policy because that's why we subscribe to the service. So for tonight's review, there's actually a total of 19 policies that are up for review. Jennifer is a hero with us again to kind of help guide us through that. So with that, I'll turn it over to Tim. And I think last time you just kind of
we just went through each one, and I think that worked out well if everybody's good with that. again, I think to your point of the recommendations from press, is it, I guess before I kick it off too much further into each individual ones, in doing so, does that also help limit some of our liability if we make modifications or changes based on specific to the district? Can you speak to that just very briefly?
So, Tim, I think what you're asking is the difference between when kind of you have a more unique or bespoke policy versus what press puts out.
Yeah.
So what I will say is, overarchingly, the benefit to being a press subscriber is that you have the regular updates coming, as press goes through 3, sometimes 4 times a year. As, Dr. Waterman just said, you just did it in June. We have this one to kind of capture that interim period, and I almost hate to tell you that it just was told to those of us that kind of participate on their advisory board from a legal standpoint. We'll be getting the draft from all the legislation from the summer in a few weeks, so that means you'll see an update probably in about October is usually when you do. So I think there is significant benefit, right? There is just no way, if you think about kind of the thousands of pages of policies that you have, that you would ever be able to keep up with it on an individual district. I also would think that press, to your point, which is press does allow individualization where it is important for a particular district. And a lot of times there are places where press is making a recommendation that is kind of legally recommended or a best practice that then gives you options. And so there are some things that, and I think your district is one of those examples where as you moved to press policies, right, you did not always subscribe to press, you did not always follow those policies. There are some things that we kind of call bespoke or kind of the unique policies that still live on. And a lot of times I raise those because I don't always have the context, right? Many of you sometimes, as board members or even the administrators don't always have some of that history. So it raises the question of, is there an intentional reason that this is unique to your district, maybe because of practice or other things? Or is it better to kind of bring the policy forward to be update with the current press policy, both from a legal and best practice standpoint, but quite frankly also sometimes from the most practical standpoint of updating your policy, because then every time a new press iteration comes out, then you're going to be updating and keeping current with where they are. So that's a lot of times what's behind my recommendation. From a specific liability standpoint, it really is going to depend on, most importantly, that the policies reflect district practice. And that's a lot of times that I bring up, especially when you're needing to make those individualized decisions. Does this reflect what the practice is in that particular department? Because at the end of the day, the board policy is how you speak as a board to give direction to the administration and everyone else, the school community and everyone else. So we need to make sure that those two things are aligned as well.
Yeah.
Because where we run into trouble is when we have something happening in practice and it's not aligned with board policy or kind of vice versa.
And I think thank you for that, because I think throughout your review of some of these policies, we do have some district-specific ones that you were thinking that would be.
And some of them might just be holdovers, and I think that's where sometimes just getting us up to date, unless there's a particular reason that we're aware of, is our recommendation just for a best practice standpoint.
Okay.
The very first one is a good
Yes,
one.
so thank you. So yes, the first one is board member oath and conduct. We have that on page 1 of 35. It looks like the recommendation here is to use press. There is an additional section that we would have to make a determination on page 2 of the part where, in quote, a board member who fails to abide by the oath of office or code may be subject to action by the board, including but not limited to formal censure and or referral to the regional superintendent for removal of the office under board 260, board member removal of office. So what is everybody thinking about 2:8? Good.
Yeah. It's
Thoughts on that
probably-
addition to that section at the bottom?
I think it's probably a good idea to have something in place, because it is often if something seems like it might need to be addressed at least in some fashion, there's no really way to know how to do that, so.
Holds us accountable.
Yeah, I agree.
We're good?
I'm good with it, and I do like the fact that it's willful.
Yeah.
Put in there,
Yeah.
because I felt
Right.
like I really struggled a little bit with this, because it could be so subjective.
Right.
If we could vote differently, and I don't feel like
Right.
that's,
Willful is important.
so I really, as long as that's in
Don't
there.
want it to be abusive, right?
Well, right, and just
Wrong.
because we can have different opinions.
Right.
And I could believe that what I was saying was right.
Right.
And somebody else might disagree with that. So I think willful's really a key. So I just wanted to point that out, that was.
So Jennifer, just correct me if I'm wrong, if they adopt that additional language, we would answer no to the required question, correct?
Okay, the way that it is phrased, Marilyn,
Or at least that's how I read it.
Right, so you're gonna
Yeah.
actually, so if you are going to include the new language
Yep.
regarding the, like removal from office, you're actually answering yes. So no would be the default language with none of it, and then yes is if you want to, oh, sorry, hold on, has the board adopted this? Yes. Yeah, so if you want to add that new language, then we need to answer yes.
No. Oh, yes.
Yes, to add that new language. And then you will put in a reference instead of the regional office of the superintendent to your intermediate service center.
It's kind of
Marilyn,
weird.
I'll
the way
make
it's
sure that we have
worded.
the right answer.
So like West 40.
Yes,
West
exactly.
40.
So West 40 will serve in there.
Yes.
Yeah, like, that doesn't
As
seem-
long as we get it in
separate.
there.
We'll get the right
You
answer
don't,
in
yeah,
there.
oh,
You see the
so you
final
don't
version.
wish to make the changes and you should adopt the updated, but answer no. If you wish to update the policy, then answer yes.
Yes,
Yeah,
correct.
yeah.
Okay.
I read that wrong.
Except that what's in parentheses.
So yeah, that's right. So
Makes
we're
sense,
so we're
doesn't
gonna
it?
answer yes, based on their discussion, we're gonna answer yes to that question.
That's
So
what
maybe-
it says.
And adopt the additional language. Basically, I look at it as, if you want more detail, then answer yes. If you want less
Right.
detail, then answer no. But it sounds like you guys want the additional detail.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just feel like the question doesn't
Right?
look like
Yeah,
it
everybody's good?
makes sense to
Okay.
the policy, does it?
And then 2130, board superintendent relationship.
Sure.
Don't know that there's any major concerns with that one unless anybody else does. I'm seeing a lot of shaking of heads, no's. 7:140 search and seizure. 5-year review. You good with that one? I don't wanna go too fast, but we good with that? Okay.
All right, so I just have one question. I'm
Yeah.
Sorry. So when you're looking at when feasible, number 3, by a licensed employer, liaison police officer of the same sex as the student. But when we put such focus on how the student would identify, how would that be?
Oh, that's a good question.
I will actually, that's more of a student services question about how you guys are gonna implement that, but I think, I mean, generally my answer would be, and I'll let Leslie speak to it as well if she has anything to add, is that you're gonna follow what your internal protocol is, right? So the policy level is gonna speak to using the word sex, but if you're going to allow someone who is the same gender identity of the student in the way that they, identify or they affirm, then that would be your internal protocol. I don't know if
Wouldn't we
Leslie or
update that
Dr.
here?
Tyrell, if you have something else to add.
Well, it'd be the difference between policy and practice, I would imagine, but I don't wanna say that for sure. Would it be? That we would adopt this with the language as stated, and then in practice, based on gender identity, we would in procedurally, we would make sure that that person.
Was able to share how they identify, and then we'd work to find that.
But that's not how this reads just here, because if you're reading here, you have-
So this here is driven truly by legal, like statutory language that talks about, and case law language that talks about it, and using that word sex as a representative of that broader picture. But what I would say is from a procedural standpoint, when you are actually implementing a search and seizure practice within your district, and if you are conducting a student search, right, that you could then implement that additional layer where you would then give the student an option if they wanted to, I think as Leslie said, to be able to have that option if they wanted to voice an opinion about what, the way in which they identify.
So we don't need to, we
I
can't,
don't see-
so the first question is, can we modify it?
You could.
But your recommendation
I
is
don't
not
think
to,
you
to go
need
based upon
to.
policy? Okay.
Yeah, I don't think you need to for the purpose of implementing your practice in the
Good
building.
question.
Yeah, but that's a very good question.
So in procedure, in policy, we leave as is. In
As is.
procedure, we will make
In
sure.
practice, that would be included, those steps.
And just to further clarify, because we ran into this question previously when we went through the press review with another question. Those procedures are outlined in writing internally, but are they public facing or no?
No, they're an internal document. We actually subscribe to a similar service. It's through press as well, but it's an administrative procedures manual versus a policy manual. So I would say most of the policies have procedures with it, but some don't. So we subscribe to that as well.
And that's kept
It's
internally?
all,
Usually
it's actually,
internal.
yeah, it's actually on the same,
Yes.
it looks very much like your policy manual.
And they would be public-facing right? Someone would have the right to have a copy of your official administrative procedure documents. They're just not posted publicly on your website in the same way. And I also sometimes use the word procedures, like what I'll call, like those are, we refer to as administrative procedures, kind of like capital A, capital P administrative
Right.
procedures, versus also your building has kind of internal procedures, you know, as you're implementing anything as it relates to it. So sometimes I think of those as like lowercase p procedures, just in the way that, you know, your buildings run and those types of things. Sometimes they are written up as well, but they don't have the same kind of weight or carry as, you know, a true administrative procedure directly to a policy.
Good question. Anything else on that one? Okay. 7:300 extracurricular activities.
I did have a couple
Yep.
questions. I think one of the question was that, so for the doctor's exam or the physical examination forms, that's something that we would ask for annually, right? If they were to participate in a sport?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I didn't know if we needed to clarify that, or, because we kind of think we say, how do we have it written?
Current.
It's number 3.
Current, it
yeah,
just says
must be
current.
the current certificate.
So, I mean, I
So
guess.
current meaning that it has to be for that current school year.
Okay, okay. And then, let's see. It's being placed, add in. I also wondered if there was let me see, number 5, the student must agree to follow all conduct rules and the coach's instructions. And I think by conduct, we probably are alluding to our student conduct, student code of conduct. Do we want to be more specific or clear about that, since we've put so much time and effort into making sure that that's,
I like that.
I mean, I think it
I
makes
support you.
sense.
I don't know what everybody else
I
says.
know, again, that we talk about the policy versus procedure and keeping it kind of general, but it's such a, we're talking so much about making sure that our code of conduct is aligned with our policies, so would we want to add that very specifically and clearly that it's with our student code of conduct?
So we certainly can put, like, the current title of your extracurricular code of conduct in there. The only hesitation I offer is that in the event that name changes, you will then have to come back to the table and update through the board, like from the board policy review process, rather than leaving it as a more generic term here, which is kind of understood to mean your code of conduct as it relates not just through regular student discipline, but also your extracurricular code of conduct. And that is always my hesitation when you ever put like a official name of a form or a
Sure.
program or something like that at the board policy level, that then requires your action for it to change, and actually then often presents more of a situation where you're not going to have policy and practice consistent, because the building level may change something without realizing that the official name is in board policy. I also will say to this is we are reviewing this policy 7300 on extracurriculars kind of in isolation solely due to being a 5-year review by press, meaning that you can see just the minor updates, nothing legal changed other than a citation, you know, updating some legal references. This policy works in conjunction with at least 2 other board policies that specifically address extracurriculars and activities, not just athletics, but also your other extracurricular activities. So there are other references to those requirements, and then you have that very, the code of conduct that you've worked very hard on, I guess it was a year or so ago now, right, to implement there. So that's my only recommendation is typically not to include like the formal name of something, just in the event that it would change.
Yeah, and I guess I kind of didn't really think that was a formal name, because it sounded kind of generic anyway. It didn't have like those seem like pretty basic. That would seem like a term anybody would use at any school, but, and I'm okay with that. I just want to make sure that also, because it is hard when we see these things in piecemeal and they come in like this, that we've put some time into looking at, to your point, you knew which ones these were also connected to within the board policy, but have we made sure that any of these changes, or if we're having to look at it and we're having to reapprove it during this time, if this was done in 2021 and in the last 3 years we've been working on the student code of conduct, I really just want to ensure very comfortably that they're in sync and there's no conflict in the information that's being presented.
And I will tell you, that's part of what I do for you, is when
Right.
I'm looking at that in that bigger picture
Okay.
that press does, and then I feel like I can speak with confidence to say that your respective kind of departments then also are looking at that. And I try to usually highlight those things that, okay, well, if we've now had a change from a legal standpoint in one of your policies, especially if it's something that I'm familiar that we've been working on, there will be kind of like a drill down to that. Or oftentimes what happens is when we're working at that building that building level of your code of conduct, we often sometimes will flag and say, oh, I've noticed that your policy now is going to be out of sync with this.
Right.
And we need to
Right.
update those types of
Okay,
things.
and, good. I'm clarifying that, because that isn't something that I have had at my disposal to review, and I know we're gonna get another read on this, so I probably will wanna go back and just look and check on that too, so.
And Carrie, the one last thing that I will mention too is, again, that it's like taking that next level down is that board policy is such a high level.
Right.
But then when you actually, if you were to look at, for example, the forms, I think, that go home to your family, for example, either from the athletic department or your activities department, and it really then kind of like drills down and will explicitly then provide them with that information where they are actually doing the sign off related to the code of conduct or any additional expectations that a coach or an activities, sponsor may actually have.
Yeah.
So I understand,
No, I
I'm a
appreciate that.
detail-oriented person, I totally
I know.
understand that,
I
but
just
it's
don't
kind of
think
that
it's
layered,
dissonance, but yeah.
effect.
And appreciate that.
Okay.
That's all I have right now.
So I have a question with regards to number 2. A parent guardian of the student must provide written permission for the student's participation, giving the district full waiver of responsibility of the risks involved. How does this impact if the student happens to be 18 or turning 18 during that
I
time?
thought about that too, but.
That's always a lovely, complicated question during a student's senior year. No, it's okay, during a student's like senior year of high school. Some of it is gonna be legal based, some of it is also how the district, kind of chooses to operate, right? I'll even step back, not to even bring in a controversial question into this, but like how do school districts treat attendance as students turn, right, 18 during the course of the school year? How do we treat other things? It's oftentimes that, so a parent or guardian for most of your students, they're still going to be minors while they're in attendance here, with the exception of those seniors that are gonna turn 18. That is why you also are having parents and guardians, and then also the students sign off on that as well. And so that's at least for part of that. So the language is obviously written also from that larger press view of that most students who are attending school are, are minors or under the age of 18, with the exception of, some seniors when they become that. So from even some of those kids that might even be like spring semester sports. I know there are some kids that are, a handful of kids or so that are gonna be older as well. So they're also going to be signing off on that. I don't want to get into too much. I'm happy to get into it further. But then there's also this complicating factor when parents are still claiming 18-year-old children that are living full-time in their house on their federal taxes, and then are they still then able to sign on their behalf, for example, also for calling out a school. There's a lot of different legal layers as it relates to when we are talking about a child who is still fulfilling, and attending school full-time prior to that age of high school graduation, and when parents are then signing off on legal documents like that for them.
I guess, and just my concern would be like, if you have, like from a liability standpoint, that if we want them to sign off a waiver, presumably that would be pending any litigation that might come. If we don't have the student sign that waiver and they would be 18 or turning 18 during the course of that, then that might be that the parent can't, the question would be, can the parent, I don't believe the parent can probably waive their child's
Right, and
rights
that's
when
what
they're 18,
typically
so that
both
would-
students and parents are signing
Okay,
off
so are
on
we
this.
doing that in practice? This is opposite, this is a thing.
Yes.
Okay, so in practice, you're having them do that.
Students and parents sign off on code of conduct.
And parents still have to call in if they're sick, if they're
Right.
even if they're 18, like,
But
that
you're talking
goes
about,
across.
and overall, I think even just for commitment as it relates to participation.
For the
Right,
extracurricular.
so
Oh,
this
for
one
sure.
says that a student must provide, or a parent must provide permission for the student's participation, and including giving the district a full waiver of responsibility of like the risks involved, right? So that's a parent acknowledging as part of participation in athletics that your student may be injured, all of those types of things that may go along with it. To your point, question is, well, what do we do then about a student who's 18, who there may be legal rights to file suit against the district?
That would be, exactly.
So we can look at that, and typically though, that students are also going to be signing off on kind of that packet of forms that goes along with their extracurricular.
So they're only
participation.
signing off them when they're 18?
No, they sign off always.
Okay, so we wouldn't miss them, okay, that's,
Just to show that they're also aware of the rules and
Got it.
regs that accompany extracurriculars.
And, oh, go ahead.
oh no, it's okay.
I was gonna say that there's always that outlier, and we've had it in our district, where the parents have said, I'm done, he's 18, she's 18, I'm not signing anything, I'm not doing anything more, they're on their own, they're living with a friend, whatever the circumstance may be. In those situations then, based on policy, how do we still support that student in wanting to do these things, and it's going against our policy?
Yeah, I think, in those
Yeah.
situations, I mean,
Right.
those are gonna be kind of very one-off tricky situations, right? Because that student then could be living with someone else who we would maybe consider a guardian, but not truly a legal guardian who is able to sign off on those students. Then often what we can do is apply kind of different sets of rules. Is that student homeless? Is that student an unaccompanied minor? Other things like that that give some exception,
Yep.
you know, to some of these pieces of it.
Okay.
And, I mean, while it obviously doesn't say it, and I wouldn't recommend that you do it, I think there are gonna be those unique situations. You could even have that situation where it's a minor student
Yeah.
who is, you know, kind of, not being
On their own,
a strong
yeah.
word, right? But
Right.
again, is living in a situation where, you know, they're homeless or they're
Unaccompanied,
transitional and we can't entertain that specific permission.
Then you'd fall in the other policies.
Right, they're gonna fall under a kind of other exceptions that apply, and then your staff is gonna work with trying to,
Okay.
able to obtain, because, you know, I
That makes sense.
speak on behalf of everyone, I don't think the goal is ever to exclude a
Right,
student from those
right.
opportunities, but being able.
But still being legally compliant,
Yes.
right? Like, that's always our balance. Okay.
And
That
what
makes
I
sense.
always hate is anytime you look very closely at look at anything that says full waiver responsibility or any of those things, at the end of the day, it still doesn't
Right.
ever stop someone,
Right.
right? If they want to file a lawsuit or seek damages or do any of those things, right, any of that is going to end up having to be kind of worked through,
Okay.
you know, that system. But really what it is, why we all sign waivers in a variety of times in our life, right, is really about putting individuals on notice that you're gonna be participating in an activity, you know, often with athletics, that it might involve a potential for injury and those types of things.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else on this one? Okay. Gifts to the district. So this is one that we were referencing before that is district-specific. And I believe your recommendation was to adopt board press policy.
Yeah, this is one that our policy is completely different than press. We don't know the history of why ours is different, but the recommendation is to get us back in line with press because it includes some recent legal updates we probably want to bake in.
So I looked it up and I thought it looked the same. Maybe I wasn't looking at the right thing. Friend, which one are we talking, on 880?
I said that right, Jennifer? So
Yeah, I thought it looked.
Yes.
recommendation is to adopt the press update.
Correct. The recommendation here is to bring it in line with the press, and I would say it's not even an update, because press is bringing this as part of their 5-year review, and that was one of the things that we noted in going through this, is you certainly could hold to the district's unique policy, but I think there are some, I consulted with kind of the more finance experts in our office, there's some important legal requirements as it relates to gifts to the district that are outlined in the press policy that I think are just important to incorporate in your policy itself. And again, brings you in line with what is that most legally current and also best practice policy from press updates moving forward. And I think this is one where our recommendation would be, unless there is a strong reason that we knew why there was a unique policy, to hold on to it and continue to move forward. That's why our recommendation is to move to the press update. I say that also because, say for example, there was some significant change in the law in this area in the future, right, then there is always that greater chance of kind of an incongruency between your policy and not, and I think that's where having the press policy helps you to be able to have those future updates if necessary.
And to Carrie's point, the press policy that you're recommending is on page 42 of our board packet.
Thank you. Maybe that's what I'm not seeing, because I think,
Which has 1 through 4.
that would be helpful.
Is it, sorry?
Is it, so the
Oh, that's so much more helpful. Thank you. I'm like, ours is exactly like this.
That's
I'm
our,
like, what's
that's our
wrong?
old one. This one in here
Okay.
is our.
It's
is
a
the
little,
one.
it's more
Yeah, so
specific.
35.
Yeah,
number 35
okay, got
is the
it.
recommendations from Jennifer's office, and then
Yep.
behind it was what our policy looked like in press.
Yeah.
That was that in Jennifer's notes, Marilyn?
Yeah, so the one that says H alert recommendation copy,
Yep.
so that is what she's recommending that we would go back to, like, that we would move to.
Okay.
Because our existing policy as
Yeah.
it looks is on page 37, which looks like this.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
Yep. Got it. Thank you, that helps. I was having a Monday, couldn't follow it, so.
Thoughts on that? I know.
I mean, I think it's good to update it, because when you're looking at the equity, I think that's really, could be really key. Especially like if you, like, go back to like the generous donation that we had with our
Right.
softball
Softball
field. But if
field.
we had 2 different schools or 2 different, like,
Right.
I mean, where you would be like, why does one campus get one, why does
Right.
one not get the other one?
Right.
So, I would be supportive of that.
of moving to the press.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep, sorry, I wasn't clear.
Yeah, that's.
So many yeses
that's
and no's and
recommendation,
moving.
yeah.
Yep, like, I don't know.
We're good on accepting the 880 press, all right. 1:110, school district legal status. Any thoughts on this one? Again, this is the update for five-year review. Not hearing anything on that one. Let's go to 120, district organization, operations, and cooperative agreements. And this one, I think specifically, we list out our cooperative agreements, right? I guess my only question to that is, any concerns if for some reason between now and the next 5 years, we move away from either one of these, we would just have to come back and update? Is it important for us to, I suppose we're required to list them?
Yeah, this is one where we do list them specifically, and if you were leaving one of these, like kind of cooperative arrangements that you have to provide special ed services, you would be going through a very significant legal process to do
Yeah.
that, and in that process, we
We
would
would
just
update. Okay.
replace that information.
So this wouldn't cover, like, if someone was like, isn't it like if you're hearing impaired, they would not go through, like, there's like, you maybe go through SASSET or something like that? So, would that, but that would be something we would pay for, so it wouldn't be a cooperative?
These are just
Out of
the
district.
official cooperatives that we're a part of.
Oh, the official
We
ones, but you would
do
use
contract,
these.
we do
Yeah,
contract
okay.
services through SASSET and CASE as well for
Okay.
some low incidence needs.
Okay, but that wouldn't be contracted with them, that would be an individual basis, okay. Thank you for clarifying.
Anything else on this one? 130, school district mission, vision, motto, equity statement, and core values.
Did anything change on this, or?
So most of the policies in this section that we are going through now are press bringing to your attention that these are in the 5-year review bucket. So of course, if there is something that the board wishes to update, if there were legal review, like there's a couple of them that have legal changes, there's one that I have a recommendation to, but something like this, for example, if you have an updated, vision statement, an updated mission statement, things like that you want to place in here, that these are typically considered, unique to each individual district, and that is free to do. If there are no changes, then you can essentially adopt. What press is asking you to do is so that every policy doesn't lag and have like, a 1994 adopted date, and, kind of everyone freaks out when they see it. That's why they put things in this 5-year cycle. If we're good, we just do a stamp, and what you do is then adopt it again, even if there's no changes. This one is one that, as the administration and the board, you'll want to look at, because obviously this is the most unique to the district. But if there's no changes, then you don't have to change anything.
And just so the board knows, we did this 2 years ago in August of '23. We made this policy reflect our strategic plan. So all the core values, the mission, vision, statement,
Equity
equity statement
statement.
is all.
Yeah.
Before that, it was much shorter, so this has been updated already.
Yeah. So it hasn't even really been 5 years.
Right.
Yeah, it's only been 2.
Good with that one? 210, school district governance. Again, 5-year review. Doesn't look like any changes, we're good. 2:240, board policy development. Have some questions about this, I think.
That's another 5-year review.
Okay. Gender include all gender neutral, inclusive pronouns, okay. Let's see, okay, yeah, I'm good. Any other questions, concerns on that one? All right. 450 payment procedures, same 5-year review. Good. Tell me if I'm going too fast.
I don't know if this is just something in general, but because we don't necessarily have a treasurer, we have a business director. What's your official role again, Brian?
Actually, my title is Director of Business Services / Treasurer.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
Oh, perfect.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you,
Yes.
sorry. That's my apologies. Okay.
That occurred when we stopped working with the township treasurer's office, was that 3 years ago? No,
If it wasn't, I think we actually updated the policy at that
We
time
did.
too.
Yeah.
To make sure
Mhm.
the titles were consistent.
Brian won't let you forget that Spartans title now. It comes along with it.
Hard to believe it was.
Good?
Yes.
Student activity and fiduciary funds.
This is one that's
Yeah.
similar to the gifts to the district one, where our policy looked a little different. We don't
Yeah.
know the history behind that, but the recommendation is to bring it up to, in alignment with the press recommendation.
Any thoughts to adapting press as opposed to our unique policy?
I'd like to go with press.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
I would too. I'm seeing a lot of head nods. All right. So that one we will adopt. The press version. 4:180 pandemic preparedness, management, and recovery. I did have a question about this one, but I think I know the answer. It's form a pandemic planning team consisting of appropriate district personnel and community members. That would be in the case, not ahead of time. If we ran into one again, we would form this committee, right? Is that?
Tim, direct me just so I know.
So number 2 on the 3rd paragraph.
Form a pandemic.
That's
My
not something we're
understand-
quite.
I mean, and I'm gonna look to the administration, my understanding is that that there should be one in at least some form to have some proactive planning, given what we have learned.
Yeah, in the event we came across a pandemic, we would want to put together a committee, advisory committee or something to help navigate through that.
Okay. And you guys had that, but there's a plan if we needed to go there to implement that.
I think we would replay that same.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was administrators or school nurses in conjunction with guidance from IDPH, so I don't think the roles on the committee would change much. It would be the same.
Community members, we'd want to include community members too. Okay.
What's unclear, though, to your point, is if the committee is already in existence, granted, they may not need to meet, but everyone's aware that they're part of this committee already as a result of this mandate, or whether or not they will be created in the future if a pandemic happens. I think that's a little bit of the variance, if it's already in play or if it's going to be formed.
I don't wanna speak for the administration, it sounds like.
Oh, okay. I guess
What you're saying.
what you guys are saying, or trying to clarify is, should we have one now?
Correct.
Or should we form one when we have a pandemic?
Right.
I mean, I think what we would say is, we have the roles of the previous team. We don't meet regularly, we don't meet at all now.
Right.
But I guess we can just bring that group back together.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we've got good protocols in place for any kind of infectious disease that's happening within our buildings. Our nurses snap into action immediately if there's any reports of any type of communicable disease. And so the people that would be part of that would be certain administrators, myself, or, at the time of the pandemic, principal, superintendent, school nurses. I guess unless guided differently, I think it would be really hard to form a pandemic team if the rate of which pandemics occur.
Right. Well, and there's so many, from what I'm kind of hearing, that as part of, so this was added to the law in recent years, right, following, the COVID-19 pandemic, to the point that, understandably, right, we had never seen something or faced something like that before, and no school district, like any other almost entity, was not in a place where you kind of had a team of people that you could pull together. So what I hear from the administration talking about now is, so there is an expectation in the law that there is such a group of people. The expectation isn't necessarily that you're meeting on a regular basis, that it is something that you have an identified core group of people. Now, it is possible 10 years from now that those same named individuals aren't gonna be here, but it's an understanding that kind of the individuals serving in those roles would fill into that. And that you would be able to meet, as you said, like, even if it's a communicable disease on a broader scale, right? If we saw, measles in an outgrowth in DuPage County, right? Is that same group of people able to kind of snap into action to be able to create a plan if we need to worry about that at the high school level? Those types of things. And so, and I, again, don't want to speak for the team, but I'm guessing that there was a review period right after after you went through what you did to kind of say, okay, that in the event that we had to do this, what did we learn about kind of that transition to online learning and different things like that. But their work right now is dormant, and that's okay.
Right.
But it is that you do in fact have such a group of individuals that would come back together collectively and implement a plan that was in place and change it in a way that would be responsive to whatever we might engage in the future.
I think it would, to me, I read that paragraph as you need a pandemic first, because
Yeah.
if you look at all the different things that team has to do, even number one, learn and understand how the roles at the federal, state, and local governments impact the district.
Yeah.
We're not gonna know that until a pandemic actually occurs.
Yeah.
Number two, identifying priorities and overseeing the development and implementation. And then even number three, building awareness of the final plan among staff, students, and community. It's
We don't know who
impossible
the
to do that
community can be.
until you know what the
Yeah.
communicable disease is.
I think we have a much better understanding of the roles that would be included within that team versus like naming people, because I just think that would be a constant cycle of staff.
I'm good. Everyone good?
Yeah.
Let's hope it's not another pandemic.
Yes,
Right.
Jeez.
right.
Let's hope we don't have to visit that again for another
No.
5 years.
We'll be ready.
At least.
Right.
Maybe 10.
Policy 5:270, employment at will compensation and assignment, again unchanged. List of agreements are current,
Yep.
good there. Any questions on that? 7:40, non-public school students, including parochial and homeschool students.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. So, we have a section in our existing policy that says co-curricular. But
Yeah.
if you read the paragraph, it's actually referring to extracurricular,
Yeah.
not co-curricular. Because
Yeah.
co-curricular is connected to a course. So one of the recommendations here is to take that section and modify it so that it says extracurricular versus co-curricular. And then Jennifer, help me out with the other recommendation.
Sure, and quite frankly, I think this might just be a matter of mislabeling in your policy that got carried over from years, because, just to draw your attention to Dr. Waterman's point about co-curricular activities, so in the first part of the policy under part-time attendance, if you allow students to attend part-time, the second paragraph specifically addresses that student may participate in co-curricular activities. So it is not that by changing the title and substituting the language, we are in any way taking away that opportunity that is guaranteed to a student, right? Because it is tied to a class, they would have the absolute right to participate in it, to fulfill the obligations of that class to earn their grade, so long as we are admitting that part-time, non-public school or homeschool student to attend school. So that co-curricular piece is addressed. So what I noted when I was reading this policy is, one, like I said, I think it's just a simple mislabeling of that section. But then when you actually read the provision that is there, again, I think we are mislabeling, or maybe just mixing the term when there was not intended to say co-curricular but was meant to say extracurricular. Sometimes I see those terms used interchangeably when they actually mean two very different things. And then my recommendation is to update this, because this language is outdated. It doesn't actually reflect the current number of course and credits that IHSA requires. I recommend just again here for be as straightforward and simple, going forward, is just to replace this with that section of the policy from press. And so I put that directly in my memo, so it's labeled from press as the extracurricular activities, and specifically speaks to, in addition, interscholastic competitions. As I said, your board policy specified a specific number of credit hours. If you needed to update it, it's actually 25 with IHSA right now. My recommendation, though, again, from that global board policy perspective, is to use press's language, which simply says that it has to be in adherence with the regulations established by any association the district is a part of. So in most cases, that's going to be IHSA for any of the competitions. And only because, I don't know, IHSA might change the rules. So let's not specify the specific number of hours in board policy. We're simply going to say that if we are allowing part-time student to participate in athletics, they also have to adhere to all IHSA rules, for example, to participate. And that's really the substitution that I'm recommending there. And then your board policy would be consistent with presses going forward as it relates to part-time student attendance and extracurriculars.
This is a really naive question for someone who doesn't know a lot about homeschooling. How do the parents, or and I'm saying parents, guardian, whoever's teaching, who's doing homeschooling, they are submitting they have to continually report probably to the state to keep up with, so that we know,
Oh.
like, I'm just saying, like, from like the educational standards, as far as like, we require our students keep certain level of academic performance to participate in extracurricular activities. And how, are we doing the same thing, and how do they do it for a homeschool situation?
So for homeschool students, they don't have to report anything to the state.
Okay.
If the district allows homeschool students or any sort of non-public school student to participate in your programs,
Okay.
including interscholastic activities, then the district does take on the burden of evaluating and looking at and requiring, much like for any of you that have had students participate in sports, right, weekly grade checks that happen for any student athlete, has to happen for any homeschool student athlete as well. And they have to then also be taking a certain number of courses here. So there has to be a process by which that if we are accepting any of their homeschool curriculum as part of that minimum credit obligation to IHSA, we have to be reviewing it, or we also, or we require the student to be in attendance here in the building to take those courses, which obviously makes the job much easier, because then they're in the building and you're accepting those courses that you would be just like any other student.
But they have to make that request in writing by May 1st of the year prior, correct?
The family.
The
that-
family does.
For the student to participate in any
Well,
one of
it's
our
a
clubs
time-
or,
part-time.
Well, or so
or with the sports, you mean, specifically?
No, I mean for
any
school,
part-time student.
but
So
then,
for this upcoming
Yeah.
25-26 school year, if you have any family who is not a full-time enrolled student in the district, if they
Okay.
want to come and access your programs in any way, academics, athletics, or any other activities, they have to request that by May 1st of every single year.
Okay.
and that's pretty standard, right?
Yes, correct.
I guess I'm just wondering why we would, or where we would deny that, but that request. I don't know. I'm just thinking about all the other implications of when students are here in school and interacting with other, of their peers, you know, and then if they're not here to do that, you know, if something is missed on them, on that student, from not being able to be, if they're not at the, well, I guess if they're here part-time, it makes sense, but if they're not here at least part-time, so we're saying,
And there's exceptions to that rule, right?
Okay.
Like, we could look at other policies or laws that say if they have an IEP or 504 plan,
Right.
there's medical or otherwise, right? There are other policies that would override that May 1st deadline.
True.
That
If
would
it's a
be
student, so students with disabilities is handled kind of
Sure,
independent
okay.
of
Okay.
all of that. I mean,
Great.
if you're, especially if you're thinking about a student with
Okay.
a disability.
sure,
If they're a full-time enrolled student, or
Okay.
if they're a part-time enrolled student, right, it all kind of depends on what this is. So the main gist of this policy is the board saying, we want to give opportunities to homeschool or any non-public student
yeah,
that lives within the
Okay.
district's boundaries, an opportunity to access your programs, academic, athletics, activities, and otherwise.
got it.
You have the option not to, but you by
Sure,
policy
sure.
have made that option available.
Okay.
And I can't speak to how many
I
requests you
understand.
get every single
Yeah,
year. Some
sure.
districts, it's one or two.
Right.
Sometimes we've seen upticks in recent years with the growth of more homeschooling, that we've started to see more requests at certain districts, and it has caused some boards to reevaluate their
Okay.
policies.
And again, I think Brian was just mentioning, that's part of the benefit of adopting press
Yeah.
language,
Yeah.
right? Because it
Certainly.
helps
Yes.
protect you.
Yeah, and most importantly to that May 1st deadline, right, it establishes policies and procedures for all of you to be able to, right, then the high school staff is able to plan, right? You know who's coming in, you don't have
Right.
someone who's requesting mid-year. It also is used to kind of, not have those requests that end up on your doorstep at the very end of the year.
Right.
Or what oftentimes is then the accusation of, well, you have an athlete who's trying to just access an athletic program
Right.
solely for the purpose of that, and they're even moving around just being a homeschooled student, right? So there's
I think-
there's a couple of
yeah, I
different
think that,
reasons
yeah, there
for
was a
having that
concern,
May
right.
1st deadline in there.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other questions, concerns on that one? So we'll adopt, the recommendation is to adopt press policy. 7:90, release during school hours. Again, 5-year review, no changes. Any thoughts, questions?
I just do have a question though.
Yeah.
I mean, back to this, I'm really, my mind is, I'm having a struggle on the struggle bus to get around, like when a child's 18. So if a child, like,
Yeah.
so just remind me, like, we wouldn't need to change anything here because the policy might be different. For like, if you're 18, like the first paragraph wanting to leave school.
So I can't speak to what your general practice is, right,
I have no
as
idea.
to, I don't know, so I'm gonna look to the administration and say, how do you address from an, if you're talking about an attendance standpoint?
Right, like, but if you're like, I want to go, like as a student, they wanna leave school early to go to the doctors that they don't want their parent to know about, so they, if they're 18, they could check themselves out. Right, school, but they couldn't, because it says here, your parent declaration.
Right, not necessarily. It all depends on what you have implemented as a school district.
Our general practice
Yeah.
is that regardless of the student's age, even when they're 18,
Okay.
we work with parents and guardians on all attendance
Yeah, unless
related
it would,
things.
okay, that's all I,
Yeah.
unless it be one of the one-offs.
Now, there could
Emancipated
be,
or whatever, okay.
when there's
Okay.
extenuating circumstances, we work on those individually, but for our practices.
Okay, I mean, I think that's good, so.
Yeah.
My child turned 18 in November, so the whole half the following year was her 18 already, and we still have to do the same practice.
Well, my children too, I'm just asking though, I mean, that might be the practice, but is that the law? Jen
Both.
Price?
Right, it's both.
Okay, so the parent still has to have, because it's different when you're like, maybe like with an IEP, that your child has to consent to the IEP at 18 and different things like that. There's different consents that have to happen for that.
But, and I will just say that, there are some districts that take a different approach when when students turn 18.
Okay.
And then sometimes they take different approaches on different aspects.
But the approach that we're talking about here is that a parent needs to sign them out. Okay.
And I will tell you that is the general rule, and it is
That's
solely
right, that's right, okay, perfect.
compliant for you to be able to do that and require it still
Okay.
across the board.
That's good.
And address it then on individual circumstance
Yeah, okay.
basis.
Now, I just wanna make sure that this didn't, this wasn't a standout from the different policies to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Good. Other thoughts, questions, concerns on that one? Okay, we're getting there. 7:130, student rights and responsibilities. Updated footnotes, it looks like, but everything else remains the same. All right on that?
And what I will say is, I think when you all receive the version from press, you don't get the extensive footnotes that are also part of their sample policies. So, just so that's not confusing to all of you, when I reference that in my memo, that there's updated footnotes, in the true sample version of the policy that press puts out, there are extensive, and you can kind of see it in some of those ones that I
Yeah.
give, there are extensive legal footnotes
Cross
to all
references.
of them. They provide a ton of information. The press spends extensive amount of times updating to make sure that they are current. They're actually a phenomenal resource, as part of kind of when you are looking to review a policy and those types of things. You just don't get them in your press update packet. So that's why I'm just letting you know that when it says legal footnotes are updated, you're like, well, I don't even see any footnotes. And that, for some reason, when press puts together the press packet, they don't, or I guess maybe a plus subscription, you don't just, receive the policy as it would look, because the footnotes are always removed in the adoption of the policy.
Very good. Questions, concerns with that one?
Nope.
All right. 7:325, student fundraising activities. Did I miss one? Is that right? No, that's right.
That's right, that's right.
5-year review, no changes, any questions?
I think this comes up every now and then, the fundraising stuff. I mean.
Can you speak up, Carrie, please?
Sorry. I just feel like fundraising has come up in the past too, about our sources and policies and procedures of how we go about doing that. And I mean, I think that it makes sense to align with press. I just think I'd like to, at some point again, maybe revisit our procedures around about fundraising.
I would agree
Make
with
sure
that. 'cause
that we're.
I think we talked about it like maybe a year. I don't know, it really blurs together.
We just updated those 1 year ago, right, Brian?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
correct.
Okay.
So I could resend it, because you guys
Would you-
got it like a year
Right.
ago, but the rest of the
Yeah.
board didn't get the
Right.
updated guidelines 1 year ago, so I could send that to the whole board.
It would be great to see
Yeah,
it
that was a
again,
whole
to
committee that
refresh.
worked during the
Yeah.
23-24 school year to completely revise them and revamp them, so
Yeah.
I can share those with you guys.
Yeah, because I know there were some equity concerns around it too, and things like that too, so it would
And
be
having
really helpful to
consistency,
see
I
it
think,
again.
Too.
Yeah.
That was like a concern.
Right.
Would that be something that we could, even though you just share it, we could put it and talk about here?
It's really a procedure, not a
Okay.
policy, but, so, I
Okay.
mean, I'd prefer just sharing it with you guys in
Got
a
it.
weekly
And
update,
then
and
we'll
if
talk.
any individual board member has questions or thoughts on, but again, that was just revamped 1 year ago,
Okay.
so. I feel pretty good about where we're at with it, but
think
I'll
it was
share that with you guys.
It'd be great, yeah, it'd be great
And
to
if you
see it
guys
again and have
thoughts or
everybody
questions, let
else
me know.
see what's
Yeah.
in progress. 'Cause it does come up a lot, so.
Okay. 8, last one, right? I believe.
We're like hoping.
No, we're good.
Getting close.
8:110, public suggestions and concerns, and this is another board-specific one, right?
Just from our perspective, I mean, your existing policy is fine, right? I mean, it's a general concept, again, about establishing procedures for how to handle public suggestions and concerns, right? So those could be emails that the board or administrators receive from the public, parents, other members of the community. Yours is unique to the district. Again, we don't really have the history on the holdover there. Our general recommendation is to incorporate or to adopt the press version of the policy. Really, it's just a kind of more of an updated best practice. It also includes internal references to other policies that you would utilize. I also like it because instead of just directing the superintendent to develop another set of procedures, it actually just lays out the procedure in the policy itself in the way that, and it is typically how you operate, right? If there's a member or a member of the community who sends an email to the board, the typical procedure is that you is then going to be kind of assigned, right, typically through the superintendent to the relative kind of department within, or to the director, and assigned to then the person who is best suited to follow up with that parent, or that parent or the community member. And then obviously then there's opportunities if they don't care for how that has been addressed, then there's kind of appeal, and I say that kind of lightly, but there are other processes by which they can follow through. So our recommendation, especially from the updates to, and it's kind of cross-reference and work with other policies, is just to update to reflect the press policy.
I'll be too.
Yeah.
Because it's already baked in then.
Yeah. Mm-hmm, makes sense.
We're good adopting the press version?
Yeah.
All right. That is it. But again, this is
Those will
just
come
our
back. Yeah,
first
that'll come
reading.
back.
Yep.
So we'll see us again at regular action meeting for the second reading and consideration of approval. Jennifer, thank you for being here this
Jennifer,
evening.
thank
We
you.
appreciate all
Appreciate
your
it.
hard work on this.
Yes, well, thank you. And I'm just gonna add one other note. I have to tell you that even though I always enjoy coming and listening to whatever gets presented before I talk, I know I usually am either here when there's like maybe an issue or I talk about dry, boring policy things. But it is so lovely to hear the wonderful things that are happening in the district, so I always enjoy coming. Very much. So thank you.
Well, thank you for saying
Thanks,
that.
Jennifer.
That's
Jennifer,
very,
thank you.
very much appreciated. I don't know what protocol on this is. Can we take a little break here? We've been going for 2 hours. Can we do a quick bathroom break or just go up as you need to go? How does that
I
work?
would just say
Just keep going and
yeah.
people,
If that
if you
means
need
up
to
to
go
you
and
guys, but I would
do a
say
break,
keep going.
we'll do a break.
Yeah.
All right.
Probably sort of way to follow, I think.
Okay, so our next item is an action item with finance, within finance, and the FY26 tentative budget. Brian Stacia.
Thank you, President Alborz. So tonight, first of all, let me explain to you why we are asking the board to adopt the tentative budget this evening. One of the procedures or the process that we have to follow through the state of Illinois is that once the school board adopts a tentative budget, we have to have it on display and available for review for at least 30 days prior to adoption of the final budget, in this case, at our September board meeting. And so this gives us, we do not have 30 days between the August board meeting this year and the September board meeting this year. So that's why we're asking the board to adopt the tentative budget this evening. There's a notice that is set to go into the newspaper later this week on Thursday. Once the board adopts the tentative budget, we'll also be posting it as required on the district website as well, and it has to be up there for 30 days. And so once that happens, once that process occurs, then we can adopt the final budget. And so that's again why we are asking the board to adopt tonight, in lieu of having a special board meeting, which we probably don't want to do just for that budget piece. So again, I kind of outlined that process here at the end of my executive summary memo there. That being said, let's go through and start talking about what we see in this year's budget. First of all, as we have some new or newer board members, this is a process that actually takes quite a bit of time. It's a process where I work with district administration, where I do a good portion of the work, from the history of the district and what's happening in certain accounts. Also looking at the revenues, looking at all of the expenditures, breaking all those down by salaries, benefits, purchase services, supplies, capital outlay, non-capitalized equipment, and all of those, as we call them, objects in the budget, because we're required to do so by the State Board of Education. When you look at the actual budget document we have here, it's called the 5036 budget form. It breaks all of that information down, also by our fund and then functions, which the funds are easy. The 10 fund is the education fund, 20 O&M, the operating funds, the 40 fund is transportation, 50 is the IMRF Social Security Fund. We do have a fund 30 in between there. That is the bond and interest fund. That essentially is a clearing fund that where property tax dollars go in, and then they go out to pay our debt obligations. So our bond obligations, that's all that happens in that particular account. Then we get into all the individual functions where we break out regular education, special education, curriculum, so on down the line, and we can go on for an extended period of time on those. But that is actually in that 5036 form that you have attached here as well. And so after we go through all of that process, of course, we also look to see what do we have staff-wise, where are people, are they moving lanes, do we have new collective bargaining agreements? All of those things play a factor into our salaries. Of course, the benefits we've had an extensive conversation about recently. And right now, we're still, we'll talk a little bit more about that in terms of where we are with the benefits. But again, we also have, in this particular budget this year, we also have something of the purchase services, right? A new contract with First Student that is going to be up 21% that we know in this first year. And so I have to look at all of that information, bring all that together, then of course look at the revenue side, and then make determinations on where we think we're going to be with the revenue. What I can tell you is this really, at this time of the year, is a tentative budget. The reason I say that is that because there still could be some changes, and we'll talk a little bit about what those potential changes could be. So any questions at this particular point? Okay, hearing none, let's talk a little bit about what we see here in this particular budget. Well, when I put this budget together, and again, what I always tell the board is that I try to be reasonably conservative when I'm looking at the revenues and the expenses. And so I don't want to be over here or here. I kind of want to be right toward that middle of where we think we should be. And so in looking at this, when we put the revenues against the expenses, there's a potential here for a $2 million deficit in this particular budget. What's driving that? Well, first of all, we can kind of go back and still look at our costs related to that health insurance for employees. When I look back toward the 5-year forecasts in prior years, we're probably $1.2 to $1.3 million, still higher than what we would have anticipated at this particular juncture. So that is continuing to drive that. Additionally, as noted in the memo as well, we have about $1.5 million in one-time costs. Now, that's actually good news for what we're looking at here, because when I say one-time costs, those are items that essentially we'll spend money on this year, but will not be back next year or in a future year budget. And so that's why I kind of itemized out those one-time costs, and we'll talk through those here in just a little bit as well. We're also, so when we talk about that $2 million deficit, if you kind of look at those $1.5 million, we're really down to a $500,000 deficit at that particular point in the operating funds alone, right? And why is that important? That's important because when you remove those one-time costs, you get a true look at what your operating expenses are. I would be much more concerned about this, as I talked to Dr. Waterman about it. I said, if we went through our salaries, our benefits, all of the other items, and we didn't have the one-time cost, and we were in a deficit position at that point, I would be much more concerned about our situation. I'm concerned because none of this makes me particularly happy when I see it. Yet by the same token, we still know that from an operational perspective, we're within where we want to be. And so that's why I kind of point that out to that fact that we have these one-time costs. So let's kind of talk about what our highlights are that are driving this 26 tentative budget. And so here's another factor. When we look at the increased costs that we have coming to the district in this current year, we're also seeing a decrease in our revenue sources. Decrease in the increases in our revenue sources. What do I mean by that? Well, the last 2 years, in our tax levy, we had 5% increases. We are now back down to 3.4% in this coming year. So that matters. As you may recall, we've had extensive conversations for some of the board members here about the corporate personal property replacement tax. And let me just kind of walk through that quickly. Historically, the district average is about $3.5 million in that revenue source. 2 years ago, I think it was 2 years ago, we were up around $11 million in that revenue source, right? That has now come back down, and we're projecting $3.8 million for that revenue source this year. And just so everybody's aware, those two factors, I still don't have from the county the final tax levy for 2024. The most recent information I have on that is that they anticipate it potentially being out around September, maybe into October. And all of you would know that because you don't have your second installment property tax bills yet. Once I receive that information, then the county will start mailing out those property tax bills, and of course you will then receive your second installment property tax bill. Right now the information I have is that they would be somewhere maybe due October 1st, maybe November 1st, which is 2 to 3 months later than what they normally are. Why is that a little problematic for us? Well, because those dollars coming into us, which normally would start coming in potentially in August and September, we are now not earning interest on those dollars as they are, waiting to be on those monies that are waiting to be used. So that's problematic, and as an issue in and of itself also. But those are kind of the like I said, those two areas. I still don't have the CPPRT estimate, corporate personal property replacement tax estimate for this year either. That usually comes out toward the middle to end of August. So I'll be updating that information as I receive that as well. Interest earnings are expected to be $2.4 million during the fiscal year in the operating funds. That would be down from about $3.2 million last year. Taking into account a couple of factors. One, we don't have the dollars from that second property tax installment as early as we did last year. And also, we did make the conscious decision to spend down some of our fund balance with the projects. And so we talked about that at the time, so we know that there is the potential for some of that to decrease. And quite frankly, over the last couple of years, we've had interest rates on our investments that are anywhere from 4 to 4.7% in that ballpark. Those are starting to now back down, and so as those investments are maturing, we're seeing still not bad rates, not by any stretch of the imagination, but we're back in the 4.1 to 4.2 range. So those are starting to come down as well. Salaries are expected to be about 5.4% higher than what they were in FY25, and I'm comparing these to the cash balances, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a second also. Benefits right now are expected to be similar in those of FY25, which includes that increase of roughly $2 million to the health insurance from FY25. So this is a number that we are continuing to monitor in those health benefits. So when we're looking at the weekly invoices, again, the district is self-insured, and so we pay the invoices. We pay the claims, the invoices that come in from Blue Cross. And so as we're continuing to monitor those, we've seen them come down a little bit from last year, but not as much as I would hope at this point. Now, that still doesn't mean that last year wasn't an outlier. We just have to kind of continue to follow that. Because it's insurance, there's no way to fully predict or project, this is what this is going to be at the end of the year. And so something that we're continuing to keep an eye on, of course. Again, the one-time costs that I mentioned earlier, right? We have about $200,000 allocated for unforeseen building issues. I can tell you we might be using some of that here coming up, and we're going to talk about that in just a bit. There's $308,300 left to pay in FY26 for the repair of the gymnasium walls at South Campus. We did make a payment in FY '25, so as you recall, we were right around $450,000 for that payment. So we paid almost $140,000 of that in last year, so about $308,300, which again, an unanticipated cost that we had to bring forward. We have $200,000 in the budget for sound dampers on the 3 cooling towers at South Campus. This was a requirement of our conditional use permit with the Village of Western Springs when we added the 3rd cooling tower in there. I'm hopeful that $200,000 is not going to be needed, but nonetheless, that's the high number that I had. And so, as I said, being reasonably conservative, knowing that that's the high number, we'll put that in there. If we don't use it, great, we don't use it. And again, our architects are working on some options there that would potentially be less than that $200,000 mark. We have $250,000. The next two, $500,000 for furniture for the South Campus cafeteria, for the Commons, and for the classrooms that have been added to South Campus. And also $250,000 for the replacement music lockers in the new music wing at South Campus. Both of these items were budgeted for in last year's budget because we had anticipated that they would be here. However, with the construction kind of now going into, potentially for cafeteria going into October, beginning of October, and with the music wing just wrapping up now, there was really no way that we would have been able to have these items delivered to the district. We could have paid for them, even if they weren't installed, we could have paid for them if they were actually delivered to the district, but we don't even have possession of them yet. And so that's why I had to pull those out of last year's budget. So that's actually a positive for last year's budget. However, we have to move that expense then into this year's budget. And so really, if you look on the next page, what I like to do is I really like this spreadsheet because this one really kind of summarizes where we are at in terms of what we see both by revenues, by fund, really kind of by function, and then the expenses by fund and really by the object. And so I break those down and you can kind of see here exactly where all the revenues come from, where all the expenses are coming from. And then you would see that, like I said, that $2 million deficit in the lower right-hand corner, which potentially could be there. We typically do better than what we see in the budget. That's fairly common. But again, I have to reiterate, this year is kind of a unique year where we see expenses really kind of rising, and we have that decrease of increases in revenue, for this current year. What I can tell you is, based on what we see here, I will, obviously for future budgets, we don't want to make a habit of what's happening here. That certainly has to be looked at, and we have to maintain the fund balances or, continue to grow them. Because that's something we have to look at as, when we look at the financial profile score for the district, and we look at the board policy. As revenues continue to grow, in theory, we would need more, fund balance to maintain our percentage of fund balance to revenue ratio. So that's something we have to look at going forward. And again, I think beyond these, there are also, as we know, from the capital projects, capital equipment that the board approved, there are many one-time expenses in there. For example, the cameras that we mentioned, that were mentioned earlier tonight. I think at this point, after the cameras are purchased this year and installed, these are the cameras throughout the district, we're going to be done with those. We're going to have a really good handle on where those are. So there's going to be some other one-time expenses that are going away that I really think are going to help us going forward. Again, what I want to note is that when you look at on this document the estimated beginning fund balance, these are cash balances. These are not audited. They are just simply what does the district look like by fund in cash balances as of June 30, 2025. So we still have a lot of updating to do with these as we go through the audit. Remember, our books are still open for this past year through the end of August because we're still accumulating invoices for goods, services, whatever that occurred in the FY25 year, so either on or prior to June 30th of last year. So we will continue to update that information, and I can bring back the board a quick look at that. What I can tell you in last year is right now, if I just take the revenue versus the expense on a cash basis, now a cash basis only, we don't operate on a cash basis, but on a cash basis only, we were about $3.2 million to the good. Now, that's only a starting point. Because what happens after that is we continue to bounce expense in. This is a June 30 number. We continue to bounce expense in. We adjust the revenues. Some of those move out into last year. Some come in from last year. And so we continue to move on that. So that's a good starting point, but I don't want to say to anybody here in the board that, yeah, we're going to have a $3.2 million surplus from last year. I can't even begin to say that here yet. When the auditors come through, do all their work, which they will do in the second week in September, we'll start to get a better handle on where we actually are in terms of operating for last year. I'm more than happy to provide the board the information that I have in a quick update, but that's kind of where we are. Again, cash basis. There are a lot of districts that do operate on cash basis. And they simply say, yep, here's the revenue, here's the expense, but it's not necessarily a true financial picture of what's actually happening in the district. And so that's important for us to gather that information and report our financials with, on a modified accrual basis, which is what we do, and we want to remain consistent to that. So, that being said, I know there's a lot of information here. The budget here is tentative. I am going to continue to make adjustments to this. When I say adjustments, those could be good, they may not be good. It just depends on what some of these other numbers come in as we move forward here. I'm happy to answer any questions on this that you may have.
Again, I would say, again, this would come back at the September regular action.
September regular action meeting, because now we'll have way more than 30 days, based on the board approval tonight, and then publication in the newspaper on Thursday. We would put it up on the website tomorrow, assuming the board approves it.
When you talked about getting the supplies for the cafeteria and stuff, and the music, are the numbers going up the longer we wait to purchase them, or they're already purchased?
They're already purchased.
Okay.
We actually, because we had them in last year's budget, we purchased them last year. And what I mean by that is, we put in the purchase order, so we've locked in the pricing on
That's
those.
what, okay,
Yes,
thank
we've
you.
locked in the pricing.
Okay.
We did that, I think it was end of March, beginning of April, in that area, so we locked that in. But again, we just couldn't, because we haven't taken delivery, we couldn't pay for them this year. So we're not continuing to see price increases due to tariffs or anything along those lines. We've locked in that price.
That was my question,
Yeah.
right, thank you.
Yeah.
So my question that I always ask is the fund balance.
Yes.
Where does this, presuming that we do this, where does this put us on a percentage for the fund balance?
Well, I don't have a great answer for that yet.
Okay.
And again, if I take the data just from here, right, we would anticipate a very preliminary answer based on last year, knowing what I know right now, and this year. If you recall, when we talked about the using fund balance for the capital projects for this summer, we believed that we would end up around 47.5%, right in that ballpark. And I think that's about, again, this is a very preliminary answer, I think that's about where we would end up.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, it could be better than that, based on the results from last year, but I think that's about where we would end up. But please don't hold me to that one. This is a very preliminary, very preliminary
I think
look.
that's like to me, that's always, I mean, you're just a budget. I mean,
Right.
obviously things come up, and not your fault, it just is what it is. So I don't want it to be perceived that way when I ask that for you, so I don't, but,
And it's a great question, because it's certainly something that I want to look at, and I know Dr. Waterman and I have had this conversation, we talked about that. It's just difficult until we actually work with the auditors and get everything squared away for last year, then to say, look, maybe last year we did have a surplus, right? And so, sure, if we have a $2 million deficit this year, maybe we're only using up last year's surplus, and so maybe we're better than the 47. I don't know that yet, but I think that's about.
because I feel like that's my marker, because
Sure.
I've been so concerned about that over the past.
Yeah.
And that to me, is I view that kind of as the marker of
Yeah.
overall where we are, because we have one year that's better than the other, and here we are, but this is like our threshold. Maybe I'm not using,
No, you're right.
That's my perception of it.
Yeah, you're exactly right, and one of the highest weighted categories, again, in the school district financial profile score, is your fund balance to revenue ratio. So that's what they're looking at. So it's a really important factor. It's important to us as well, and it's something
Scorecard
that
metric as well.
we want to keep.
Yeah,
we
that's
wanna
why I
keep-
was
Yeah,
like,
right,
so much
exactly.
goes into it, so.
Yeah, it's one of the metrics, and
Brian, in
we'll
terms
find-
of when we will have more clarity on that, that's late fall, early winter?
Yes, so typically what happens is, as we said, the auditors will be in the first week in September, second week in September. They will do all the field work, and then we continue to go back and forth with them. Usually we present to the board in December. So there's a good chance that we might start to have some more data as we get through November, that sort of time frame. One of the, I guess, unfortunate parts about the whole process is that the auditing firms are auditing all school districts at that time of the year. So anyone who does auditing work, any firm that does auditing work for a school district is doing all of that auditing work at that time of the year. So we get tossed in the queue with all the other districts. They're working on them, getting through them, and it takes some time to get that information back to us. But that would be the goal, would be to have it done really by December, and maybe a little bit sooner.
Thank you.
Question.
Sure.
Thank you, Brian.
Other questions, concerns? And I know I speak for the board, I appreciate all of the work. I know this is not an easy conversation to have, but it's also a lot of work that goes into it. So I again believe I speak for the board. Thank you for all the work that you put into it. We're gonna hope for PPRT numbers that come back a little bit more positively.
Always hope for that.
And maybe a little revenue at the end, so thank you for the work on that.
Yeah, you're welcome, thank you.
This is when we do need.
Yeah, so this is an action item, so I do need a motion to approve the tentative FY '26 budget as presented.
So moved.
Second?
Marilyn, will you please call roll?
Member Vita Daniels?
Yes.
Member Kozalka Campbell?
Yes.
Member Dillon?
Yes.
Member Giannotti Fry?
Yes.
Member Kennedy?
Yes.
Member Lopez?
Yes.
Member Alvarez?
Yes, motion passes. Our next item, we're gonna stay with Brian Stashak for the consideration of approval of the first student contract. Again, not great news here
Yeah,
today, but
yeah.
we're gonna keep going.
Yeah, thank you, President Alvarez. So we had provided an update to the board on this. First of all, we did that back in, I think it was May? Was
I
it?
think it was May.
It was May, yeah, we provided an update on that. We went to bid for our student transportation service, regular education transportation services. The reason I say regular ed transportation services is we work with two separate companies. First Student for regular ed transportation and Grand Prairie for special education transportation. That contract, the Grand Prairie contract for special ed, is actually held with LADSI, with our special ed cooperative. They bid that out for us and for all the districts that are members of LADSI. So this one, the first student contract, is ours. The reason, first of all, let me give you a little history. The law changed last year. It was January 1st of 2024 was the change in the law. And the law prior to that basically said you can maintain your current transportation company beyond your contract on an annual, 1-year annual renewal basis, provided that no other company comes in and asks you, provides you a letter that says, we want you to go to bid. Okay? So, as District 204 was, many districts are doing, we were just annually rolling over our contract with First Student. When the law changed in January 1st of 2024, it really put a limit on how long we could have a contract with a transportation provider. And so what they basically said was 10 years, you can do, like a 5-year contract and do single-year rollover for 10 years, and you can actually go out to 15 years if the majority of the bus fleet is electric. So, okay. That being said, it was the opinion of legal counsel to the district that he said, well, based on that, because we had been rolling over that contract for so many years with First Student, that we probably were out of compliance with the law at that point, based on the change of the law, not intentionally out of compliance, but based on the change of the law. So we obviously went to bid. We did that in March of 2025. We received the bids back, and again, for those of you who were not here, First Student was the bidder. They are the incumbent. They were the only bidder, because I can tell you that it would be very difficult for somebody else to come in, another transportation company with overhead costs, to be able to, underbid First Student. I don't want to say it's impossible, but it's close. Yeah, and so we had one bidder, First Student as the one bidder. They came in with a 21% increase for next year. The way that the contract is written is such that in future years, so this is a 5-year contract, in future years, their increase will only be the equivalent of CPI for the district. So it'll be capped at 5%, the lesser of 5%, or what the CPI is for the district. So if next year's CPI is 2.9%, well, then that's what they would receive in the future year. So 21% in the first year was it's a bit of a hard pill to swallow. And I think I mentioned here it's about probably around $400,000 of increase to the district in that 1 year. We worked with First Student to try to come up with a potential solution, because again, there were 11 other districts with us in this particular bid, because, and the reason we bid it this way was because we actually have a sort of economy of scale efficiency with other districts, because we share buses with First Student. So what that means is, when you look at the pairings, this was a question earlier, when you look at the pairings, there's a paired route rate and an unpaired route rate. So the paired route rate means First Student runs our students, they drop them off here in the morning, and then that same bus goes to another district and goes out, picks up their students and delivers them. So we try to pair as many of those routes as we possibly can, because we're only paying half the cost. And so we wanted to keep that structure with all of the districts that currently are served out of the Hodgkins facility, with First Student. And so that was our goal here, was to do that. And again, so as we said, the 21% increase in the first year, the other districts got together, we talked to First Student, we said, look, is there any option to lower that first year cost, and then take the language and say, okay, I'm gonna make up a scenario. 10% in the first year, and then 5% in those future years. So you're getting a good bump in the first year, but then instead of 1.5% or 2% for the CPI, you're guaranteed 5%, whatever the case may be. Every time they came back to us, we would present something to them, they would come back to something with us. Every time we presented something to them, they would come back with a number that over the course of 5 years was actually higher than what we anticipated here with the 21% plus what we would project for CPI. So at the end of the day, it didn't make any sense for us to say, yeah, okay, we'll take this number here in the first year, not the 21%, and then go forward 5 years from now. And so, 21% over plus, let's say we're 3% in those future years, another 12%, we're at 33%. They were coming back with numbers that were between 35 and 40% over 4 years or 5 years. So it didn't really make any sense for us to, and that was including the compounding factors and all that sort of thing. Didn't make any sense for us to, really negotiate that back down. So we went back to them after a couple of months of negotiating, said, look, we're done. We're going to take the 21% and we're going to move on from here, because at the end of the day, we still believe we're going to pay a little less than we would in that 5th year than if we had taken the other proposals from them. So that's where we stand right now. The data is here. Some of the information I talked about with the route rates, the paired and unpaired route rates, the 21%. You also have a copy here of the agreement itself. Now, what I do want to point out is that this is sort of the boilerplate language of the agreement. However, one of the important factors here is that this document is the sort of controlling document, if you will, unless, of course, there's something that is not mentioned or that is in conflict with the invitation for bid. And so if you look at section 2.1 of this contract, the contractor shall during the term provide transportation services described in the district's ITB, which is the invitation for bid, in contractor's bid, which are incorporated herein. The contract documents are comprised of the district's ITB, which is, again, our bid spec, the contractor's bid, and this agreement form. And then it talks about the sequencing of which document takes place, takes prevalence in a situation. And so our bid document also is part of this contract. I didn't put it in here because it's extremely long, I'd be happy to share it with anybody, you know, because obviously it's out there and we'd be happy to get that information to you. I believe there's a question about, because it's not here, about any sort of clauses where there would be for non-performance. And there are, if you, in the bid specification itself, for late routes, it's 50% of the route for that day. So if, you know, let's say they're charging us the, you know, $227, that bus is late, half of that would be, when we look at that on a daily basis here in the district, we then go back and charge that back to them and say, these buses were late, here's the cost of the route, here's 50% of the route, we let them know that our expectation is they will be crediting us that on the invoice. And they have, because we've been doing that here with the current contract as well. That being said, I'd be happy to answer any other questions. Again, there's no other options. It's first student at this time, and that's what we have.
And I think, because I just stepped out right when you started talking, but when did you say, you said in compliance with the law, it has to be reevaluated, or we have to put it out to bid, how frequently?
Well,
5 years, is it?
No, I think right now, we would have the ability, this is a 5-year contract,
Okay,
and we would have the ability to continue to roll that over, if it was favorable, 5 years from now, for I believe 5 more years. So
Okay.
up to
And
10
then
years.
after that, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
so up to 10 years, we could go on this contract. Again, unless, in the law, First Student somehow turns I think it's most of their fleet over to electric buses, then we might be able to go 15 years. I don't know that that's gonna happen.
right, or to look at it as, how much time do we have to look it up, come up with another solution?
Well,
I know.
yeah, I mean,
I know.
there's, when it comes to transportation, I can tell you that, as we said, as far as any other companies coming in here to, again, underbid for student, I think that's a very long shot at best. And so that makes it very difficult. The other possible option, of course, is that we go into the transportation business ourselves as a district. And I can tell you, I came from a district where we had our own transportation. The benefit there is the fact that you can run your own schedules, do whatever it is you want to do, whenever you want to do it, and it comes at a cost to the district. You're gonna certainly pay more than what we're essentially, potentially more than what we're paying here. Because now you're assuming
Hiring
all the cost
personnel and-
that is for the capital, because you're replacing buses
Equipment.
every so many years, and they're not inexpensive, and, you know, all that sort of thing, so.
And just a little background maybe for the rest of the board, like we talked, you know what I mean? I think we had talked about it before, like I know I had a lot of questions about it
Right.
initially, and it was not something that we as a board at that time had decided it was prudent to even look at.
It was, yeah. Again, when you look at all of the hurdles to get over to do that, to start that up, you know, you have to find a location, let's say, you know, for us, let's say we need, I'm making this number up, 50 buses. You have to park them somewhere every night, right?
It's not just a bus.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I know, like, I mean, just a little background for you all that, you know, it was
Right.
something.
We did look, we did
Kind of what we
discuss it.
predicted for years.
Yeah.
It's what we predicted for years how it would play out, and it did.
Yeah, it did. That's kind of what we thought was gonna happen, and that's exactly how it went down.
Do we have any idea how long the district has been in this situation with just one service?
That's a great question. We've been with, obviously, First Student for an extended period of time. I don't know the number of years, but we've been with them for an extended period of time. And I just want to be clear of the question. Are you saying how long we've been with just that service, or in the position where we only have one service
In the
available?
position where we only have one service available.
So, here's the best way I can answer this question. When I started in school business 25 years ago, there were large companies, you know, sort of the conglomerates, there were regionals, and there were local transportation carriers. In the course of that time, most of those regionals and smaller local companies had been bought out by, you know, the larger companies, Illinois Cook, First Student, and there aren't that many left. If you go on to, I believe, one of the websites, I think it's Cook, Illinois, if you look on there, you can scroll down to the bottom of their website, and they have all the companies that they bought in the last, 10 to 15 years, whatever the case may be. And you can see there's quite a few. Yeah.
So the reason for my question is this is probably not gonna change anytime soon, and even for it to change, it's the same problem that we looked at if we did this ourselves. A carrier has to come in and find a location where they can park 50 buses, they have to buy the buses, they have to staff the buses, they have to maintain the bus. I mean, this is not gonna change, really, I don't think, anytime soon.
I think your observation is accurate.
So that, from one side, it scares me that they've got us. They can't, I mean, we don't have other options, and that's frightening.
Yeah. I think your observation, again, is very accurate in terms of where we are with this.
Be nice to look at some state laws or policies or
Right,
advocacies that
like
could
monopoly,
prevent this
kind
from
of
happening.
a situation that they could have come back instead of 21%, they could have said 41%, what do we do?
That's a good point.
Yes.
And that's,
Seems like that would be the only way to prevent that from happening.
I just have a question as far
There's
as,
no
um,
bus vendors that
the
can
contract.
speak out.
We have a contract with.
But we have to work on the
obviously,
policy
First
that
Student.
says they
You
have to
also
cap that they
mentioned,
can't.
Grand Prairie, right?
Yes.
Do we have a contract with them too? Or is that a different contract, or how does?
Right. So the contract with Grand Prairie is,
That's a different, that we have to vote on later too?
no, that one actually is through LADSI, our special ed cooperative. They are the ones who bid that for us. Because again, we can find quite a bit of I forgot what's the term I'm looking for there, sort of, transporting students, in particular, with special ed students, oftentimes there are additional needs that students have to have. And we can actually find an economy of scale by transporting more than one student than, us just going out and doing it. And so LADSI actually bids that for us, for all the districts that are members of the cooperative. And then we can find, like I said, some economy of scale there with transporting students.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
The only question I had, you answered already about the bid specs for the late buses. That was very helpful. But the unpaired routes, are all of our routes paired, or most of them? Do we know what the percentage of that is?
So many of our routes in the morning are paired, and many of them in the afternoon are not. One of the reasons that many of them are paired in the morning is because we have an earlier start time than most other districts. And remember, we're not just talking about a high school district, we're talking about elementary district.
Right.
So when first student is, dropping our students off here at 7:20, 7:25 in the morning, they have no problem getting buses out to the elementary districts who aren't starting till 8:30, something along those lines. The afternoon is not, they're not paired as much because many school districts are getting out around that 3 o'clock hour. So, yeah.
And to save some funds on both ends, the elementary feeder schools are working with LT as far as, to save on both ends.
We do.
On the elementary school level and on our level, so. I remember going through that years past, so it works out good.
Yeah.
Beyond that, though, I understand the feeder schools are also leveraging this. Are other districts outside of the Lyons Township area also leveraging? How many districts would you say are part of our agreement of sorts that, just trying to understand scale? How many in total, and are any of those districts exploring other opportunities, or have they gone through the RFP process as well and landed in the same spot?
So the districts that we have, that we work with, right, we have, for example, your question about the outside of Lyons Township, and the answer is yes. Some of our buses are paired with Oak Lawn Hometown 123. They are paired with Ridgeland 122, so those are two Oak Lawn districts that are next door to each other, down in the 95th Street area at 95th and Ridgeland, with Burbank 111. So there are districts outside that don't feed an LT that our buses are paired with. And so all of those districts, including the ones that are in LT, right, the feeders, and Argo is included in this as well, in this bid. So all of us, that was the group that put this bid spec out on the street. And again, doing it for the purpose of maintaining those, those paired routes. Had we had a situation where each district went out Now, it might make it a little different story for, you know, one individual district to leave, but again, we didn't know if the economy of scale was still gonna be there for them. So that's why we felt it was the best way to go and do this. And so I don't know what other districts are doing outside of that, if they're bidding these by themselves, if they're doing something similar. I do know that one of the bid specifications we looked at was from a group of, I think, 3 or 4 districts that did something similar. I think it was Glenbard, if I remember correctly, with some of their feeder districts as well. So I think this is the way that districts are gonna be looking to bid these in the future to maintain these relationships with other districts and have these paired routes.
Brian, let me ask, and Jill, please feel free to, since you originally brought it up, when you looked at us having our own transportation,
Yeah.
did you look at going out to those other districts that are in the same boat with us and doing, where we don't buy all the buses, everybody buys the buses, and we
Yeah.
kind of share them that way too, as
Yeah.
opposed to through a corporation?
We did not at the time,
Okay.
because really what that does then, what it would do is it would basically put us now in the position of us plus the other districts really operating a transportation company.
Understood.
And so we did not do that at the time. Again, it's something perhaps in the future we could look at doing. I mean, I would suspect that probably if we said, hey, look, we're gonna bring in all the districts that we currently have, there'd probably be 100 buses we'd have to buy, as a group, to continue to maintain, you know, all the routes that we would have. Right now, I think they're about $130,000 a bus, somewhere in that area. We'd have to have a place to, again, all of those, the things that we
Yeah,
talked about
yeah.
are just on a bigger scale at that point. That doesn't mean we couldn't do it. But we did not at the time look at that and say, well, what does this look like if everybody jumps in on this?
I'm just wondering, and this is not for this year, or next year, or the year after that, but I'm just wondering if we don't start some sort of committee to start looking, because, again, this is something that I'm alarmed about, because 20 years from now, you know, I mean, when you have a monopoly, which is what we have, they're gonna make the rules, and us and other districts are gonna be forced to say yes.
So if I'm understanding you correctly too, right, we could be looking at the same contract with CPI for take the big hit the first year and then CPI for the next 9? With a 5-year roller?
It would be
Or
the
it's-
next 4.
It's 4, but you said we can roll it over up to 10?
Yes. Now, in those future years, any one years, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 will just be a negotiated agreement. It won't be.
not automatically.
Right, it's not an automatic
years of
CPI.
protection,
roll.
but then
Okay.
it's gonna come back to negotiate.
Okay.
Right.
So
Yeah,
it
'cause-
could go back up to
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
you're saying.
There you go.
Well, to be fair, we've been working with First Student. First of all, let me say this. We've been working with First Student for a long time, and their increases outside of this bidding structure have not been this at all. They've been in the 5, 6, 7% range, which I think in some cases is probably fair over the last few years in terms of their labor costs, and, you know, they're not immune to inflation either, right? So they're seeing a lot of the same things that we're seeing. And what I can tell you is that when we look at our route rates, so even the ones at the 21%, with all the other districts, as we got together and we talked about them, they're not terrible in terms of rates for buses on a daily basis. Yeah, sure, we're seeing a big increase, that we know, but they aren't awful in terms of where we are when we look at those rates compared to some of the other districts.
I did a little math based on what you were saying, so, for, I think, a discussion we're gonna have later, CPI for the last, since 95 is average 2.3. So if you do 21 and 2.3 at 5 years, it comes up to 32.5. Where Brian said, well, we tried 10 and then 5 every year, that comes out to 35. So
Right.
we're pretty close.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
We just
even
hope
with
that CPI doesn't go to
it's gonna
8 in the
look
next 3
very
years.
similar to
Yeah.
what the previous 5 years looked like.
Yeah.
Brian and I talked about that too.
Even if CPI went to 8, they would not.
Oh, 5, sorry.
Right,
Cap
they
at
would be
5.
capped at
Right,
5.
Right,
Correct.
right.
Yeah, because we are.
Correct, yes.
Anything else on this? This is a voting one, so I just want to make sure we're prepared for that.
Voting, I don't think we have an option.
Right.
We need some buses next week. 2
Unless
weeks
we
from
go
now,
to
don't we?
remote schooling again for everything.
Yeah.
Get this
Right.
approved.
Yeah.
How was that?
We need to get this approved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We need students to sit here in class.
All right. If there is no other discussion, can I have a motion to approve the first student contract as presented?
So moved.
Marilyn, will you please call roll?
Member Gazelka Campbell,
Yes.
member Dillon,
Yes.
member Giannotti Frye,
Yes.
member Kennedy,
Yes.
member Lopez,
Yes.
member Vita Daniels,
Yes.
member Alvarez.
Yes, motion passes. Our final finance item is a discussion about an emergency authorization for repair at South Campus condensation tank. Brian Stashak.
Thank you, President Alborz. So I'm going to actually turn this over to Brad Drake, who is our Building and Grounds Director here in the district. He can give you kind of some information on this in terms of where we're at and why we potentially would be asking the board for the emergency authorization. And let me just fill in the legal side of this. With board policy, we have up to $50,000 to spend on a repair within the district that does not increase the size or scope, square footage of a building, right? And so the reason we're talking to the board about this tonight is because this particular repair is above $50,000. So what does that mean? Well, that means we would either A, have to go to bid for the repair, or B, ask the board for the authorization for the emergency procedures. And I'll let Brad take you through exactly what we're looking at here and what the issue is, and then we can kind of come back and revisit that conversation. Brad, go ahead.
Good evening, everybody. This past heating season, our condensate tank at the South Campus began to fail. At the end of the season, the tank had failed. We made attempts this spring to have the tank repaired by a vessel repair company. They were unable to repair the tank. So we've reached out to several contractors, and we've received one quote so far to replace the tank, and that quote is $78,960. Now, I'm still waiting back on 3 other contractors, but this is the cost that it's gonna take to replace this tank. Some of you may be curious what a condensate tank is. We run a steam boiler system for our heat at both campuses. That steam boiler system pushes steam through the buildings. It's either directly heating with the steam or it's converting over to hot water. Either way, that comes back as condensation. Condensation feeds back to the individual pump groups that send it back to the main boiler room. That condensate mixes with new water, gets chemically treated, and pumped right back into the boiler. So by losing the condensate station, we're losing a significant amount of makeup water, which then forces us to bring in additional fresh water. We can continue running with this damaged system, but we're essentially hemorrhaging water, and our water makeup costs are going to be extreme, and chemical costs.
Right.
So our attempt is to get this fixed and have this tank replaced as soon as possible. Can I answer any questions on the condensate tank? I know every time you see me, it's bad news looking for me. This tank particularly is over 50 years old, so it's had a good run.
And what's the life
With these type of systems, they're like your home hot water tank. They start failing and then they fail.
I was gonna ask, what's the life expectancy on the tank? Are we
The
well
way they
past?
used to build them, these were steel tanks. So getting 40 years out of the tank was considered good. So the fact that we got 50 years is a testament to our quality of water that we're running in our treatment program. The newer tanks, sometimes they will put a different kind of lining inside them. They'll put a plastic lining that they'll say, could give you 60 years potentially. But the old tanks, the lifespan was about 40 years on them.
Brad, was the contractor who, the bid, was that the same person who was trying to do the repairs too? I mean, I didn't know if there was any scale
No,
of.
the repairs was from an independent vessel company.
Okay.
And they made a repair for us last year in one of our storage tanks. We were hopeful they'd be able to help us again, but they weren't able to.
Okay.
Brad is also actively seeking at least 2 more
Okay.
quotes from some other companies, maybe 3, as we talked about, just to kind of see that we're in the ballpark with
Right,
this
right, right.
$79,000, $80,000. And if that's the way that they continue to come back, then that's when we have the decision to make.
Thank you for staying here this late with us and
Yeah.
sharing that with us. I
Right.
just have a question, as far as the new tank, on that bid package you're receiving, that includes all new hardware to connect to the old system?
That's correct.
Okay, just wanna make sure that there's no extra hidden cost after the fact.
No, that's not the case. In fact, the companies we've reached out to are companies the district trusts have used before. These are people we've done business with for years. So we're not gonna, the way the quotes come, they tell us.
Well, that's what I said, I mean, I'm talking about like,
Yeah.
since you said it was 50 years old, that's what I'm saying, it's a big difference from 50 to today.
Right, yeah, the
That's
quotes
why.
include all of the new piping, all the new valve systems.
Perfect.
That are included.
Thank you.
I think the other, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, thank you again for staying. But what's your deadline for the RFPs to come back to you, for the additional quotes that you're waiting?
What's our deadline? I'm trying to get these by the end of the week.
Oh,
End of
okay.
next week. It's, right now it's difficult with these companies. They're all extremely busy with summer work. But we've reached out and we're hoping to get them out and get the quotes as soon as possible.
That's good to know. Thank you.
The other point I wanted to mention too is that Brad, as he's looking in this, and there's a lead time, right, to the equipment, to the installation. And so he had sent an email to me a little while ago, 14 weeks for delivery, and then about 2 weeks to install. So we're probably looking at roughly 16 weeks here potentially at this point.
4.5 months.
That's if we ordered it today. And so that puts us right in the thick of the heating season. And what we really want to avoid here is a complete failure of this tank where that's it, it's done, and now what do we do?
That's the emergency.
Right.
Right, correct. Yes.
Brad, can I ask, when was the quote received on the,
We got this one on July 28th.
okay, with the August 1st deadline tariffs and anything, we don't expect that to change, to go up? We don't know?
Don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, don't know.
We really need information from other contractors here to compare the numbers.
Right.
That includes lead time. This is what we got from Oakbrook Mechanical, who's using Adamson. Other companies may use a different company for their tank. So I'll know more once we get additional quotes.
Right. If somebody was to come in under $50,000 on one of these quotes, and it's apples to apples that we're comparing and saying, look, this is exactly what we
Right,
need,
right.
this is,
Great.
then this conversation goes away.
Right. Yep.
Somebody just has one that they want to unload. laying around.
Yeah,
It's off the
I
truck.
think those are sort of custom made, aren't they,
Not
Brad?
falling off
Those-
the trucks or anything?
It'd be great if they were.
I've already started scanning for used ones out there, and there's not a whole lot.
Well, not only that, time is of the essence too, if we're looking
Right.
at the time frame that
Yeah.
we're looking at.
We
So
need to
if
move.
anything, we need to move.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but we need to move forward, so.
I'd
Yes,
like-
go ahead.
Sorry. Since we're waiting until the end of this week, could we possibly just have at least another competitive quote, just to understand
Oh, sure.
what, before we.
No,
still
but if they come in,
authorize-
if they come in
yeah.
within that week, but if they
Right.
don't, that's the key. It's
Right,
like,
right, right.
we have to put a timeline as far so he can actually get moving on it,
Of
cause
course.
if it takes 2 more weeks, then that pushes us 2 more weeks.
Right, right.
So,
No, we didn't have this on as an action item tonight. We
Right.
just had this on as to
Information.
inform the board, we can get quotes, and we'll be prepared to come back on August 18th with a
Great.
recommendation,
make
and
a
then we will be
decision
asking
by
the
then.
board to vote on it so that August 19th we can move.
Unless you get one under 50 and then you won't bother us.
Then we
again.
won't,
Just-
right. And
okay.
again, provided that quote says, yeah, this is exactly what we need, great, we would move forward with it at that
but
point.
then that would be the deadline then, obviously.
So if anyone is listening to this recording.
Yeah, deadline would be
Looking
that.
for-
that- that- by
Procure a
next week.
tank, yeah, for under
So-
$50,000, we would take that, yes, immediately. Okay. It's not gonna be-
Well, thank you again for staying late. I know this has been a long night. And
Thank
we
you.
appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Brad.
Thanks, Brad.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brad.
Thank you.
All right, now it's time for our second opportunity for audience members to give comments or feedback to the Board of Education. Marilyn, do we have anybody signed up? No, we do not. Great. At this time, the board will move into closed session for collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employer or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary, schedules for one or more classes of employees, 5 ILCS 120/2C2, and the setting of a price for sale or lease of property owned by the public body, 5 ILCS 120/2C5. The setting of a price for sale or lease of property owned by the public body, 5 ILCS 122/5. Okay, the board will not be taking action after tonight's closed session. Can we have a motion to move into closed session?
So moved.
Second.
Marilyn, will you please call roll?
Member Dillon?
Yes.
Member Giannotti-Fry? Yes. Member Kennedy?
Yes.
Member Rosales?
Yes.
Member DeDaniel?
Yes.
Member Campbell?
Yes.
Member Juarez?
Yes, motion passes. All right, thank you, everybody, for being here
Thanks,
tonight.
everybody.
And we'll take a
Good to
little
see you
5-minute
too.
break to use the restrooms.
It'll be a great
play.
year.
Oh, it's gonna be.
Let's do it.